Good morning and welcome to the October 20th meeting of the Interim Finance Committee. If we could have Mr. Gavin please do the roll. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Here. Assemblywoman Dickman for Assemblyman Levitt. Here. Assemblywoman Garlow. Here. Assemblyman Hafen. Here. Assemblywoman Howdigi. Here. Assemblywoman Miller. Here. Assemblyman C.H. Miller for Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Here. Assemblyman Roberts. Here. Assemblywoman Titus. Here. Assemblywoman Tolles. Here. Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager. Here. Vice Chair Carlton.
I am here.
Senator Canizaro.
Here.
Senator Dondero Loop.
Here.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Senator Hammond.
Here.
Senator Harris. Here. Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Severs-Gansert. Here. Senator Tatro. Here. And Chair Dennis.
Here, thank you very much. We do have I believe everybody's here.
Mr. Chair, if I may just interrupt the meeting for a moment before we get to public comment.
You want a point of order?
Yes.
Okay.
No, please.
All right, go ahead.
With your discretion. We are joined this morning by Governor Steve Sisolak, and want to welcome you, Governor, to the Interim Finance Committee, and welcome you to the table to address the committee.
Thank you for having me this morning, and my voice will hold out till about noon usually, and then I lose it, so I wanted to do this early this morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your service, of course, and I know this is going to be the last IFC meeting of this legislative session before the election comes, and we appreciate all of the service that all of you have given to us over this period, and I want to acknowledge at this time, and the reason I'm here is to acknowledge 3 individuals who served out their time and are expiring due to term limits, which have a double-edged sword, certainly. We're losing some of our best and our brightest to term limits, and that have given us so much at such a time where it's desperately needed. So the 3 individuals that are termed out that I'd like to present a proclamation to on behalf of the state is Assemblywoman Teresa Benitez Thompson. Thank you. She was first elected to the Assembly District 27 in 2011, served in the state legislature for 12 years, became the first Latina majority leader of the state assembly in 2016, graduate of McQueen High School and UNR, licensed social worker, Miss Nevada in 2002, third runner-up 2003 for Miss America pageant, and married to Jeff Thompson and has 4 beautiful children. So on behalf of the state of Nevada, I won't read the whole thing to you because I know you guys have a long meeting ahead of you here, but I'm going to read just the last line. Now, therefore, I, Steve Sisolak, Governor of the state of Nevada, do hereby proclaim October 20th, 2022 as a day in honor of Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Okay, and now, Mr. Chairman, Senator Mo Dennis served in the state legislature for 18 years, elected to the state assembly in 2004, elected to the state senate in 2010, first Latino to serve both state senate majority leader and president pro tem, worked as a computer technician for the private and public sectors, including Nevada Public Utilities Commission. Parents immigrated to the United States from Cuba. Graduated from Rancho High School, married to Susan Cook, and is a parent to 5 children. On behalf of the great state of Nevada, we'd like to present this to you, and I'm going to read the last line. You're sharing this day with 2 other people, just so you know. Now, therefore, I, Steve Sisolak, Governor of the State of Nevada, do hereby proclaim October 20th, 2022 as a day in honor of Senator Mo Dennis. Okay, that brings me to the final one. Uh-oh. I can't look at you when I read this. Assemblywoman Maggie Carlton served in the state legislature for 24 years. Started her career as a state senator in 1998. Elected to the Nevada Assembly in 2010. First member of the state legislature to serve the maximum number of terms in both the Assembly and the Senate. Serves as chair of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee since 2017. Strong labor roots, was a member of Culinary 226. Now serves as the executive director of the United Labor Agency of Nevada. Married to Merritt Carlton and has 2 daughters. On behalf of the great state of Nevada, now therefore I, Steve Sisolak, Governor of the state of Nevada, do hereby proclaim October 20th, 2022 as a day in honor of Assemblywoman Maggie Carlton. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for having me this morning and giving me this opportunity. And before I wrap up and head back over to the Capitol, I want to say thank you, not just to the people that we honored, but to all of you and all of your families. This is a family job that you've got here. Your families have made enormous sacrifices in order to share you with us and with the state of Nevada this entire time. Whether you've termed out or you're just moving on to another career or another time, your families have made enormous sacrifices to get us this far. We've spent time away from them, birthdays and holidays and ball games and recitals and everything else. And we acknowledge the fact that you've made enormous sacrifices, and they have made enormous sacrifices. So thank you all for doing that, and please thank them for the sacrifices that they made to further the state of Nevada and help us all. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Governor. Thank you for being with us today. All right, we will now go to next item on our agenda, which is the public comment, item number B. This is the first public comment period, and we'll also have a public comment period at the end, as always. Also, because of time considerations, each commenter will be limited to not more than 2 minutes. So I think we've done that for quite a while, so most of you are used to that. But anybody that's new, you have 2 minutes. Also, you can call in to provide testimony during public comment. You can dial 669-900-6833, and then it'll prompt you for the meeting ID and everything, and all that is available online. It's also listed on the agenda for today, the information for connecting. So with that, we are going to go to public comment. We're going to start here in Carson City. Anyone wishing to give public comment, if you'd come forward. And go ahead and fill up all 4 slots so we can move through these as quickly as possible. Okay, why don't let's start to my left, to be your right, and then we'll just go across. And then as the seats fill up, if you're going to come, just feel free to move forward. Thank you. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Dennis. Committee members, for the record, I'm Connie McMullen, representing the Personal Care Association of Nevada. I'm here in support of item 33 to support the allocation of for the Aging and Disability Service to develop a program to address shortages of personal caregivers. Nevada is currently suffering a critical shortage of direct workforce caregivers throughout our state, especially in rural Nevada. Personal care workers aid the aged and disabled, including children who cannot provide care for themselves. This is a vital service that allows people to live independently and avoid more costly premature institutionalization. PCAN not only supports the use of this allocation for training and retention of caregivers, but would also like to see annual training of personal care agency administrators who directly impact and set the culture for their workers. Investing in training and elevating the skill sets of the 300 administrators working for licensed care agencies in our state will positively impact caregiver turnout and improve care to clients. We additionally support item 19, which would reduce wait lists and expand capacity for homemaker and chore assistance services for older adults, as well as item 26, to provide more home-delivered meal services to homebound, aged, and disabled people 60 and older. PCAN thanks you for the consideration of these items. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Carissa Pierce, CARISSAPEARCE. I am the Health Policy Coordinator at Children's Advocacy Alliance. I am speaking today to urge your support for funding for a few key agenda items impacting Nevada's children and families, primarily D81 and 82 and D100 and 101. Agenda items D81 and 82 are in reference to the expansion of prenatal care services in rural Nevada. Communities in rural Nevada are disproportionately affected by a lack of sufficient medical services, including prenatal care for pregnant people. Prenatal care is essential to healthy pregnancies and has been proven to increase health outcomes for the baby and birthing person. Access to quality prenatal care has been linked to lower rates of preterm birth, fewer cesarean deliveries, healthier birth weights, and increased breastfeeding initiation and success. Expanding prenatal care in rural Nevada will raise the overall health for pregnant people and infants. Agenda items D100 and D101 refer to the expansion of newborn screening panels to include an opioid exposure test. These infant screening panels already exist within our medical system, so adding opioid screening is easily achievable with this investment. Infants who have been exposed to opioids in utero have an increased risk of developmental alterations that become more difficult to treat the longer they go undetected. However, early screening and initial treatment intervention can majorly improve health outcomes for infants suffering from neonatal withdrawal. Supporting this will improve the healthy growth and development of infants and children and uplift the health of Nevada for a better future. Again, I ask that you give your support to these agenda items D81 and 82 and D100 and 101 and prioritize the future health of Nevada's children. Thank you for this time.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, members of the committee. For the record, John Arascata, Washoe County Public Defender. The Washoe County Public Defender's Office comes today and stands in support of items number 130 and 131, which are to allocate ARPA funding to renovate space at the City of Las Vegas Detention Center to create additional bed space for the forensic treatment and care of incompetent people facing criminal charges. We'd like to thank the governor and his office for spearheading this effort and taking the first step in addressing treatment capacity at our forensic hospitals, which quite candidly is at a crisis state. We look forward to continue to work to address the issues Nevada faces regarding forensic hospitals and treatment. And as I said, we stand in support of items 130 and 131.
Thank you very much. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Dennis and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, and I'm here representing 300 people that we thought, 300 members of the Nevada Housing Coalition. We thought it'd be better if we just sent one person rather than have 300 people come and tie up public comment. But we are here in support of item number D9, the transfer of the $250 million final tranche for the Home Means Nevada initiative. On behalf of the Coalition Board of Directors and all of our members, we want to express our just thanks to Governor Sisolak and his team for their leadership, your leadership in approving the first tranche, and of course, Director Reynolds and Administrator Acroft and his team, their teams, as we have worked through the mechanics of the Home Means Nevada initiative. We know that this is going to change the lives of many in Nevada as we move these dollars out. We're very close to getting some approvals. And so with the second tranche, we were over allocated, which is just a tremendous problem to have with the allocations, which I'm sure you'll hear more about later today. But we just wanted to urge your support on behalf of the Board of Directors, Christine Hess, and all of the members. We just want to thank you for your leadership. And on a personal note, you have an item number D117 and 116. My father was the 8th heart transplant recipient on November 22nd, 1968 at Stanford Medical Center. He was 86th in the world, and a transplant institute in Nevada is so important. And I just appreciate and thank the governor and appreciate your consideration. This is near and dear to my heart, changed my life. And I just want to thank you for your consideration of the dollars.
Thank you very much. And I know appreciate your heartfelt testimony there with your dad. And but I know on the housing things that people have the same feelings about that. And we appreciate, I know, and on behalf of the committee, we appreciate that you didn't bring 100 people to tell us that, because we do feel that, and we know that there's a lot of passion on the housing. So we appreciate you coordinating that, and thank you very much.
And I should, we sent a letter to all of you this morning. It should be in your inbox, and we sent it to the secretary. But thank you so much for everything that you have done to change the lives of Nevadans today.
Thank you. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Dennis and esteemed members of this committee. My name is Char Frost, CHARFROST, and I'm the Statewide Family Network Director for Parents Encouraging Parents. And as you may know, I entered this career over a decade ago as a family peer support provider, motivated by my lived experience with my own children. Nevada PEP was organized over 27 years ago and is designated by SAMHSA as Nevada's family network for families whose children have behavioral health disabilities, and by the U.S. Department of Education as the Parent Training and Information Center for our state. It is nationally recognized that family-to-family peer support is a critical service in the system of care. And in Nevada, this service has been valued for over 25 years by the state through our long-standing partnership with the Division of Child and Family Services. Currently, our family peer support providers complete a 2-year national training and certification process. There is a critical need to develop a time-efficient training and certification program unique to Nevada that will increase the certified family peer support provider and supervisor workforce. We are excited to work with our national and state partners and the DHHS divisions to develop a sustainable training, credentialing, and technical assistance program that meets nationally recognized core competencies and skill sets for family-to-family peer support providers. The work that we do in supporting families is extremely rewarding, and it matters. Research has shown that families who receive support from other family members with lived experience are more likely to engage in and complete services, as well as achieve better outcomes for their youth and the family. And I'd like to take just a moment to personally thank you all for your service, and thank you for considering all these items that are so incredibly important to families, people with disabilities, and our most vulnerable citizens, quite frankly. It means a lot to us in the disability community that you're considering such investments to help support people to stay in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Andy Belanger with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, here today in support of items D3 and D4 related to digitization of the State Engineer's Office, and also D63 and D64 related to the Nevada Water Conservation and Infrastructure Initiative. The Water Authority is the largest water purveyor in Nevada, and we're facing still a 24-year drought and aridification on the Colorado River. We've done a lot of things in our community to help the community weather the changing circumstances on the river, and we need this funding to do more. We have significant challenges ahead of us, and this funding will help to amplify programs that will reduce consumptive water uses in southern Nevada. We are laser focused on reducing outdoor water use. The legislature passed last session AB 356, which removes non-functional turf and enhances our programs that we have related to that. This initiative will allow us to apply for funding to reduce other consumptive uses, including helping businesses convert evaporative cooling technology and to address septic system conversions. Those are our two other large uses of water consumption, and we have to address those. We've done a lot of things at the local level to reduce water conservation, and this program will help us at the state level do that. We want to thank the governor, thank legislative leaders throughout the legislature who have really focused on water conservation. They're important issues, and we appreciate your support on those items today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Doug Busselman. I'm the Executive Vice President of Nevada Farm Bureau. I would also like to direct my comments to Agenda D3, D4, as well as D63. The items in their respective ways deal with funding for water, an extremely important and worthy investment for Nevada to be making. D3 and D4 speak of committing $6.4 million to fund the Water Resources Initiative to update data to inform water resource management. D63 authorizes $100 million to go to some type of water conservation and infrastructure initiatives which would operate under the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Nevada Farm Bureau supports the priority of the Nevada Division of Water Resources conducting a meaningful program to use the most current and comprehensive science to evaluate our 256 groundwater basins to determine the current status of their respective perennial yield capability. Nearly 40% of our state's groundwater basins are classified as being overcommitted. Of those 40%, 19 to 20% are also being overpumped, at least by estimates that are available presently. Our organization maintains that before any changes in Nevada water law are even considered, we need to know what the situations are on a basin-by-basin basis. We support a full study and evaluation that produces a responsible baseline inventory of where we are. From this perspective, while we don't believe that the $6.4 million is sufficient to carry out the in-depth analysis that's needed, we support you providing funding to accomplish this important work. We don't know what the Water Resource Initiative is or what the detailed plans will be for that, what will be accomplished with the $6.4 million. That is provided in the narrative that we've seen as far as your agenda is concerned. We also like to understand that this program will accomplish and what the expectation should be for the $6.4 million. On D63 and the $100 million investment, we know even less. We're not clear what the two additional positions identified will do or what water conservation and infrastructure initiatives might be. I'm sure that you will be given some type of explanation when you get to that point in the agenda, but this is our opportunity to speak. There are a great deal of needs to bring Nevada's water resources and management up to the level that we need for addressing the challenges that we have as well as the ones that need attention when we finish with what we've got going on. We aren't opposed to making these kind of investments. That level of support and attention is needed, but there ought to be more form and assurance of what will be delivered for the money being spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jeff Fontaine. I'm representing the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority and the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. The Central Nevada Regional Water Authority is a regional government made up of 9 member counties And the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority is also a regional government with 5 member counties. And thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment this morning. Nevada is the most arid state and also one of the fastest growing states, but we manage our state's water resources with outdated information and technology and inadequate staffing. So we are very encouraged to see the following work programs on the agenda this morning: item D4, item D63, and item D74. We do support item D4 to fund the Water Resource Initiative to update data to inform water resource management, because the existing baseline studies, which are still being used, are 50 to 70 years old. However, we do question whether the $6.4 million will be enough to complete the studies to yield useful information about the basins, including the perennial yield, which, as I'm sure you all know, is the maximum amount of groundwater that can be salvaged each year over the long term without depleting the groundwater reservoir. A lot has changed since those baseline studies were completed in the 1950s and 1960s. There's better modern and scientific methods to assure the accuracy of the information, and climate change has disrupted hydrologic conditions and impacting groundwater basins. Of Nevada's 256 groundwater basins, half are fully or overcommitted and 55 are overpumped, and the conditions in many of these basins are reaching a critical stage. There are overpumped basins in both the urban and rural portions of our state, and so accurate basin information is essential to resolving existing conflicts and fundamental to the effective management and preservation of water resources for the future. We urge the committee to ensure that there is sufficient funding to complete this important work. With regard to item 63, to transfer $100 million to DCNR to support a water conservation infrastructure initiative, that would represent a substantial and much-needed investment, but it does raise questions about how the money will be spent, what the priorities would be, and what projects would be eligible. We support water conservation. We know it's needed, but we would ask the committee to also consider allowing the funds to be used for other important projects and programs, such as cloud seeding, retiring water rights from on a voluntary basis and overpumped groundwater basins, and updating local water plans to address both existing conditions and prevent future water shortages. And lastly, we support item D74, which would add $283,083 to the Division of Water Resources to fund much-needed modernization and digitization of the state's water records. In summary, the American Rescue Plan Act provides an unprecedented opportunity to increase funding, which is needed to effectively manage our limited water resources for sustainable growth and prosperity. And again, thank you for considering our comments.
Thank you very much. All right, anyone else wishing to give public comment here in Las Vegas? Carson City. I wish it was like this in Las Vegas. Great. Let's go down to Las Vegas. We'll start on my left, so it's going to be your right down there. So.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Interim Finance Committee. My name is Jim Jimerson. My wife, Carol, and I serve on the board of the Nevada Donor Network Foundation, and we are privileged to be here this morning to join with you in support of items D116 and D117, the allocation of $15 million to the Department of Health and Human Services for, in turn, supporting the Nevada Transplant Institute to initiate liver transplants here in Nevada, as well as to expand the existing kidney transplant program that's here. One of the things that we know, and our common goal, is to have transplants be available to all residents of the state of Nevada, transplants to occur inside the state of Nevada. We no longer wish to have the old joke about where do you go to get good care? You go to McCarran Airport, now Harry Reid Airport. Now we come to Las Vegas, we come to Nevada Transplant Institute, we come to have our children saved and our people given, our recipients, a second opportunity at life. I come from the other side. Our son Jacob chose to give his organs as he passed 4 years ago, and we have lived the sacrifice that we have endured by recognizing that he has contributed his own body to give second chance lives to recipients. And that combination lets us know that what is important here is life must go on. And this opportunity that you, members of the committee, have to support this program is very much appreciated, and we urge you to support the same in this manner. We have learned through our own experience that the opportunity to lead a new life, a second chance, an opportunity to lead, to love, to have families is very, very important, and it gives hope to all of us who are in that category of needing transplants of organs, eyes, and skin, and the like. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for your support and to urge your support of this allocation of needed funds. There is many, many worthy projects that you're hearing about today in all of your different Interim Finance Committee meetings, but none more worthy than the Nevada Transplant Institute and the Nevada Donor Network. Good morning to you all.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next person there.
Good morning, committee. My name is Lauren Molaski-Fierst, and I am a double lung transplant recipient, and I serve on the board of the Nevada Donor Network. I received my life-saving transplant 2 years ago after declining rapidly on the wait list for 11 months and living in the hospital for 4.5 of those. I have lived in Las Vegas my entire life until the day when I made the decision to move myself and my young children out of state so that when the time came, I'd be near UCLA. With a lifelong knowledge that a lung transplant was in my future, the idea that such a life-changing medical need was not possible near my home and family had steep disadvantages and heartache. With Nevadans not having access to any type of transplants other than kidney, these hardships are felt by so many others as well. A transplant is not only reserved for the critically ill, and while it might not be personal for everyone, it can become personal in an instant. I'm grateful every single day for my donors' selflessness and for the people who work to keep me healthy. Our community and the residents of our state should not have to make the difficult decision to move for their lives to be saved. The physical, emotional, financial, and mental burden of doing so is felt by all involved and for long after care is received. As I struggle with side effects and the constant difficulties to just obtain my medications, I know that some of these burdens will be far less difficult if my care center was local. Transplant care is forever and plays a significant part in one's life, even after the incisions are healed and a second chance at life begins. Every 9 minutes, another person is added to the national transplant waiting list. 6,000 people in the U.S. died in 2021 while on that list. 17 people die each day waiting for a transplant. I knew some of those people. With one donor's potential of saving 75 lives or more through organ, eye, and tissue donation, the change we hope to see needs to happen now, where no Nevadan leaves their home to be cared for in another state. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller, or the next person.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. I am Shelley Berkeley. I served in the Nevada State Legislature 40 years ago, and in that former capacity, I want to thank the 3 members that are retiring. I know how much work you have committed to public service, the sacrifices you have made, and there are millions of our fellow citizens whose lives have been improved, although they may not know you personally, by your service. So on behalf of all of them, I want to thank you for everything you've done for our state. I'm here today to express my support for the Nevada Donor Network and the creation of the Nevada Transplant Institute and its impact that it will have on our medical community. Personally, I'm very supportive of this endeavor, and I have been for the last 20 years. I've had the privilege of knowing both the Jimerson family and the Molaski family for as long as I can remember, for most of my life. So this is personal to me to see them going through not only being a donor, having a family member donate organs, but to be the recipient as well. And I suspect many of you know people similarly in a similar situation. We brought the VA hospital to Southern Nevada because I worked with so many veterans that had to leave the state in order to get care for whatever ailment they had. And at a most difficult time when they need the support of their family, they're forced to move and, for all intents and purposes, go through this journey by themselves. Same here with the Nevada Donor Institute. It is a transplant institute. It is so important to have an institute like this here in our state so that our fellow citizens don't have to travel out of state when they need their family members more than ever. I'm also here as head of the largest medical school in the state of Nevada, Touro University. Think of the possibilities that this Transplant Institute will present to the medical community. UNLV Medical School, UNR Medical School, Touro Medical School, working hand in hand in collaboration and coordination. We can be creating rotations so that our students are working side by side with transplant physicians and all the other support team that a Transplant Institute will need. In addition to that, creating residency programs. We could be creating generations of transplant physicians and medical physicians, scientists, nurses, physical therapists, social workers, pharmacists, all working collaboratively to ensure the health and well-being of transplant recipients. This is a most important proposal, and I'm going to urge each and every one of you to support item D116 and D117 and urge approval of the governor's recommendation for $15 million. This donation, this amount of money is going to make a significant difference and move us forward in an exponential way. It's good for Nevada, it's good for our fellow citizens, and it's good for the medical community. It's a win-win for everybody, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Berkeley. All right, let's see. Did you fill in? If we did, let's go to the far left. If not, yeah.
Good morning. I'm Mason Van Houweling. For the record, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of University Medical Center and also the current past chair of the Nevada Hospital Association. And on behalf of the largest public hospital in the state and our 65-member hospitals in the Nevada Hospital Association, please accept our support and development of the Nevada Transplant Institute. Items number 116 and 117 on your agenda are extremely important to our state. Many Nevadans, as you've heard, leave the state for each year to relocate for months at a time to be closer to a transplant facility. Many Nevadans leave this is a huge burden on more than 600 plus Nevadans waiting for a transplant. And it's even bigger sacrifice for the families. The dollar requested of the state will be a crucial part of a $35 million campaign called End the Wait, that the Nevada Donor Network Foundation established to develop a transplant institute in the state of Nevada. This funding will expand current kidney transplant programs at UMC in Las Vegas, but also more importantly, expand in creating a new liver transplant program in its initial 2 years. The foundation, in partnership with the Nevada Donor Network and Nevada hospitals statewide, will recruit qualified physicians, nurses, support staff, to Nevada to implement a successful transplant program. It's estimated that within 12 months, this program could be fully operational and self-sustaining by month 25. Nevada residents will no longer have to seek life-saving care in surrounding states. Patients will be evaluated locally, transplanted locally, and cared for locally. The Nevada Transplant Institute has the potential to transform our entire healthcare system. Not only will it benefit Nevadans who need organs, but it will also attract more specialized healthcare professionals. It will foster medical research and help grow Nevada's economic development efforts in healthcare. Again, thank you in advance for supporting items number 116 and 117. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next call. Next person.
Good morning, distinguished Chair and members. My name is Dr. Tiffany Tyler Garner. I'm offering public comment on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. Today, a number of historic investments are proposed that will improve conditions for children and families, whether it's the investments in children's mental health, early intervention services, or independent living supports. These investments are proposed at a critical time in our state's history, whether it's the wake of the Department of Justice's investigation and its findings, record inflation during a time where we have children transitioning from our child welfare system, or our historic challenges, like our challenges with modernization in the unity system. You have an opportunity to take several next great steps for children in this moment. And so we implore you to give strong consideration to supporting these efforts while thinking through the ways in which we have the possibility of transforming a number of the safety nets for our children, whether it's the investment in early intervention services, where not only is there a focus on increasing services, but looking at our workforce issues at a time when we know workforce issues abound across a number of systems, including child care, Medicaid, and other critical supports offered by the state, or the ways in which we have an opportunity to consider some of our most vulnerable youth, our youth transitioning from the child welfare system, and shore up support center Chafee funding. You can make change happen today if you support these items. And so we implore you and thank you, not only for the investments that you've made in children's mental health in previous committee meetings, but also the opportunities that you can make happen for our systems, family, and children today. Thank you on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance and families across our great state.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Madam Vice Chair and distinguished members of the committee in Las Vegas and in Carson City. My name is Jason Mills. I'm the current President-elect of the Nevada Justice Association. I am here in support of item number D65 for the Department of Administration and Hearings Division addition for an e-filing system. As many of you know, the Nevada Hearings Division covers amongst other things, industrial injured workers adjudication, a very important division within our state. Currently, it is beset with many challenges, problems, and procedural issues, and we believe that this particular expenditure is desperately needed so that the filing of court documents, like they are all over the state in our district, municipal, and judicial courts, will be similarly matched and more efficient so that the members of the public and their counsel can more adequately and fastly get the documentation they needed in front of the courts in a timely fashion. I would like to say thank you to the governor and his staff for advancing this expenditure, and I would urge the support of the entire committee for this much-needed funding. And on a personal note, and on behalf of the NJA, to Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, to Chair Dennis and Vice Chair Carlton, thank you for your service. You will certainly be missed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go back over to, let's start there, to the left, or to your right.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving us this chance to talk about Nevada Transplant Institute. I'm here because I want to share my story, my very own story. My name is Rita Vaswani. I'm Senior Vice President of Nevada State Bank. 2 months back, my husband passed away to Alzheimer's. He was suffering for 5 years. Towards the last months of his days, he made a promise that he would die at home, which we did, and with the family and the grandkids. But the second wish was that his organs be donated. He actually donated everything, and we did according to what he wanted. His brain was given for research, and every part of his body, the limbs, the skin, was all donated. And this was all thanks to the Nevada Donor of Nevada. This would not have happened without the help of with their care and the way they explained it to me, how it was done. I did not hesitate at all, although my husband knew about it, Nevada Donor Network, but he didn't understand everything. But towards that time, we were so honored that we did what we could to save lives. His organs went every part of his body, limbs, skin, just everything that we could think of. And because of that, I'm here to share with you that we've been married 52 and a half years. It would be 53 next week. It's very difficult for me to say this, but if this were to happen with anyone in your family or future friends and neighbors, where would you go? Are you willing to go out of state to do this? Are we helping our Nevadans? Are we trying to understand the needs of Nevadans? The Organ Institute is very, very important. I barely knew about this until when my husband got to be very sick. And to me, I made this a mission, my dedication and compassion to help others understand what he went through and what I'm going through, because without that, the blessing that we're getting from people that receive whoever received it is much more beyond words. So I'm here to please for an approval to support the 116 and 117 for Nevada Institute for Nevada Donor Network. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next person.
My name is David Savarese. I am a practicing academic pediatrician here in Las Vegas. I'm here to talk to you about the children's mental health crisis that we are facing. My practice has been focused on treating children with developmental, behavioral, and emotional problems. I have also been attempting to teach and reach out to the rest of the pediatricians in the community to treat these patients in their office instead of simply identifying them and referring to a specialist. For example, a child who's suspected of having autism, who is referred currently to an autism specialist, can expect an up to 2-year wait list to get seen for an initial visit with that specialist. I have done conferences and educational sessions with the other pediatricians in the community, and the feedback that I receive from them is that they understand what I am saying, they understand what to do for these children, but they cannot provide these services in their offices because these patients are very time-consuming and resource-consuming as far as office staff for case management. With the current reimbursement structure that exists right now, they must still refer to specialists to care for these children. My own organization is speaking to me about the visits that I'm doing, evaluating children with behavioral and developmental problems, telling me that I need to do less of them because it is costing us money. We need to address this problem by looking at the Medicaid reimbursement rates for behavioral health visits done in the primary care pediatrician's office. Right now, a pediatrician caring for these patients will be losing money because the amount of time it takes to care for these children properly is not compensated for by the current reimbursement structure. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next person.
Thank you. My name is Darren Emley. I'm the public defender for Clark County. I am here in support of items D130 as well as 131 for the renovation of the Las Vegas Detention Center for additional bed space of a forensic hospital. I echo the comment that we are currently at a critical stage right now. The delays for someone found to be incompetent, the transport has gone from approximately 7 days to well over 2 months now. Some of those delays have led to tragic results within our detention centers. And so we are desperately in need of additional bed space to treat those that have been found incompetent. And with passage of D130 or the support of D130 and 131, that would certainly alleviate many of the problems that we have in the state of Nevada. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to the next person on the far right.
Good morning, Chairman Dennis and members of the IFC committee. For the record, my name is Dave Doyle. I'm the chair of the Family Focused Treatment Association, FFTA. We serve the 600 most vulnerable youth residing in specialized foster care who've been categorized as severely emotionally disturbed. These are our kiddos who have disrupted from a multitude of foster homes and are facing, they have few to no placement options. And so today, I represent the kids who are at school and can't be here. I'm also the director of Eagle Quest, and my most important role is I've been a foster parent for these kids who are severely emotionally disturbed for the last 20 years without break. So during COVID, this was a very, very challenging time. I'd like to support Administrator Pitlock and her vision to enhance the system of care for children and families in Nevada. We truly appreciate the legislators' support of her ARPA requests. Unfortunately, many of our foster children and foster parents won't have access to these funds and services. So as you're aware, Nevada is in a severe foster parent recruitment and retention crisis. We're down 20%. We're losing more and more beds, and that results in kids, unfortunately, piling up in congregate care facilities like Child Haven, and some even going to detention. The foster care agencies, the specialized foster care agencies that support these families, their costs are skyrocketing from unprecedented inflation, labor wage rate hikes, and the lingering effects that COVID has brought on our community. Unfortunately, without an increase to room and board, the specialized foster care agencies will be unable to operate and serve new children effective January 1st. We have a message into the governor's office, and they've been working with us, as well as Clark County's been a wonderful partner, but we desperately need this committee's support. In light of the Department of Justice findings, the skyrocketing population at Child Haven, and the increasing number of youth placed in juvenile detention, we desperately need your help and attention to this matter. Nevada's children belong in a least restrictive community-based placements which specialized foster care affords. They don't belong in out-of-state facilities where they are away from their families and local supports. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you. Let's go to the next person.
Good morning, Chairman Dennis and members of the committee. My name is Anya Earl, and I'm here today representing Specialized Alternatives for Families and Youth, an FFTA member, Family Focused Treatment Association. I'd like to echo my colleagues' comments and add some historical context to the looming crisis we experience. Currently, our FFTA members contract with the state for rural counties and Washoe and Clark counties to provide placement services. The state currently provides room and board for rural placements only, while Clark and Washoe manage the room and board rates locally. In addition, we bill Medicaid for some, but not all, of the medically necessary services our foster parents provide. Several years ago, the state significantly changed our Medicaid model with the promise to eventually offer a full array of 8 billable services. So far, only 2 of those services that the state committed to are available to our specialized foster care families. There is a report at the end of your binder with an update on those 2 services for your review. The county stepped up and increased the room and board rate to assist our specialized foster care families during this transition, which happened nearly 5 years ago. At this time, DHHS committed to assist with that room and board as well, but that has not yet happened. Our continuum of care will be in crisis if we cannot accept placements beginning January 1st, but we have no other choice. We remain committed to continue working with the state to find a solution, but felt that this message also needed to be conveyed to the legislature, as the youth and families in jeopardy are your constituents. The most immediate way to provide relief to our burnt-out foster families is through the room and board rate. We ask this body and the executive branch to find bridge funding to support the most vulnerable in our community immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's go to the next person.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the IFC Committee. My name is Christina Vela, and I have the joy and privilege of being the CEO at St. Jude's Ranch for Children, and also here representing Family Focused Treatment Association, as my colleagues just previously commented on. We are incredibly grateful for our ongoing partnership with DCFS and Administrator Pitlock and her team, as well as Clark and Washoe County, for our ongoing commitment to care for child victims of abuse and neglect in our state. We know there are many competing priorities for funding. However, we're here to ask for your support to care for Nevada's most vulnerable, our children. We need funding allocation in item D of the ARPA request. We need bridge funding to get us through the next fiscal year. As mentioned before, we will continue to work with the executive branch to find a solution for the looming January 1st date, but we also wanted to bring this to your attention. Since the beginning of the global pandemic, our families have been asked to do more and more and more with less. Along the way, we were asked to keep children at home for more than a year while Clark County School District schools remain closed in person. Our families have been asked to transport youth to their medical and behavioral health appointments, school activities, and provide normal and stable lifestyle for children who are living through the tragedy of being removed from their homes due to abuse. Meanwhile, inflation is rising at an alarming rate. Food, gas, clothes, movies, and daily cost of living is weighing heavily on our foster families. We are asking you to engage with us as providers and FFTA members to find a solution for our families. We need a small increase to our room and board rate as an investment in the families who quietly and lovingly take care of our children. No one wants disruptions, and we're committed to maintaining the youth we have in our in our homes. But unfortunately, if the state is not able to support additional funding, this will create additional burdens on placements, and we are not certain that we will be able to continue to take placements. We are hopeful that together we can come to a reasonable solution. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Let's go to the next person.
Good morning, Chair Dennis and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moratkin with the Vegas Chamber. I'll keep my comments brief, but the Chamber did send a letter of support for the Nevada Donor Network and the Nevada Transplant Institute as it relates to item number D116 for funding requests. The work that they will be able to do with the support of these funds will improve healthcare in our state, as you've heard from many of the folks who have already testified in regards to this item, and will help save Nevada lives. The work they do is truly admirable, and their leadership in Southern Nevada and throughout the state is well respected. I ask you to please consider this funding request for not just for the families that are going to be impacted today, but those in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to give public comment? Okay, we're going to go to those that are online. I'm going to ask BPS to put them on. I'm going to make just a quick statement. My understanding is there's at least 23 of you waiting to give public testimony on phones. If someone's already given what you have said, if you could help us out by, you could say ditto or just make your comments brief. We'd appreciate that, but we want to hear from all of you. I just want to remind that if you are saying the same thing, we want to hear it, but just try to make it as brief as possible. So with that, BPS, would you put the first caller on, please?
Thank you, Chair Dennis. To provide public comment, please press *9 on your phone now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning. Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. Item number 16 on your work program list would move an additional $1 million of ARPA funds to support confidential exit surveys and working condition surveys to facilitate informed decisions about attracting and retaining educators. While NSCA hasn't taken a position on this appropriation, we have consistently sounded the alarm about Nevada's crisis-level educator shortage over the last year. Today, there are still about 2,000 vacant positions in the Clark County School District, with hundreds more in Washoe. Meanwhile, some rural districts have up to 40% of their teacher positions with no certified teacher. Over the last year, NSCA has also consistently articulated what Nevada must do to address this crisis. And we even have an easy slogan to remember: time for 20. With thousands of educator vacancies and some of the largest class sizes in the nation, time for 20 means a 20% educator raise, a $20 minimum wage for people who make schools run, and an average class size of 20 students. On Monday, the Southwest Outreach Academic Research Evaluation and Policy Center released a report on the teacher shortage in New Mexico. They found that over the last year, New Mexico's teacher shortage declined by 34%. When other states, including Nevada, have seen increases in our educator shortage, what makes New Mexico so different? Well, it doesn't take exit surveys to figure it out. This February, New Mexico passed a legislative package that delivered an average 20% raise to New Mexico educators. Now that salary package is paying off, attracting more educators to the land of enchantment. Nevada has the largest educator shortage in the nation. So why aren't we following New Mexico's lead? Well, that's for you to answer. However, we know when we talk about time for 20 with decision makers, we frequently hear, time for 20 sounds great, but how do we pay for it? Again, that's for you to answer. With that said, last week, the Economic Forum met, and the numbers are really big. For fiscal year 21, the state's net revenues came in $226 million over projection. For fiscal year 22, they came in over $1.01 billion over. For this year, it's likely we'll see a similar number. This is in addition to hundreds of millions of dollars of unobligated and unspent ARPA funds at the state and school district levels, and another $1 million you could redirect from exit surveys. Nevada, the crisis in public education is severe, resources are available, and we need bold action now. It's time for 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Barry Gold. I'm the Director of Government Relations for AARP Nevada. AARP is in strong support of the following items on agenda item D. Number 12, that'll provide in-home services, home modifications and repairs. Number 18, that'll support telehealth training of healthcare providers. Number 19 and 20, to reduce wait lists and expand capacities for homemaker and chore assistance services. Number 24, to support a mobile respite program and wait list reduction. Number 26, to provide home-delivered meals for homebound adults aged 60 and older. Number 33 and 34, to support development of a program to address shortages in personal caregivers. Number 50, to expand access to care navigation services. And number 91, 92, and 93, to fund a nursing facility and assisted living facility workforce initiative. So, wait for it. On behalf of the 346,000 AARP members across the state, we strongly urge the Interim Finance Committee to approve the funding to these items that will increase the independence and quality of life to older adults and families across the state. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Jamel Nance. I'm the Director of Prenatal to 3 Initiatives with the Children's Advocacy Alliance, and I would like to express my support in favor of items D45, D46, D89, and D90 pertaining to ARPA funding to evaluate the Nevada Early Intervention Services System to incorporate best practices. According to the Prenatal to 3 Policy Impact Center, access to quality early intervention services can improve the developmental trajectories of infants and toddlers and prevent further delays. Timely services may also reduce the need for special education or more intensive support when children are older. We must ensure that early intervention services are evaluated to incorporate best practices for our most vulnerable children in Nevada. In addition, I urge you to support the transfer of funds for the development of an early intervention professional development center. To best support children with disabilities, it is imperative that we support the workforce with adequate training to ensure that professionals in the field feel supported and empowered to provide critical services that will surpass their involvement with families served and set them on a path for success. This can be done through the implementation of an early intervention professional development center that will help our state keep up with the growing demands by supporting the workforce, ensuring those with a passion for early intervention service enter into and stay in the field. And while we continue to champion for early investment, I would also like to acknowledge Work Program E12, which identifies the reversion of funds from the Nevada Ready Pre-K Aid and also the Child Care Development Fund Quality Aid, reversion back to the general fund. And while we understand that this is there were some significant factors that contributed to the reversion of funds, like the COVID-19 pandemic, we would like to continue to share the importance of early investments now for the future of Nevada's children. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And let's go to the next caller.
Good morning. Leanne McAllister, Executive Director of the Nevada Chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Although the 263 pediatricians who make up my membership are in support of many of the proposals today, I will briefly give a very strong ditto in support of funding to Chafee funding for foster care and funding for early intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning. This is Sarah Hunt with the Nevada Hospital Association. The Medicaid rates paid to hospitals in Nevada are very low. The NHA is working with Nevada Medicaid to establish a hospital Medicaid provider fee program to raise reimbursement rates. To complete the work, Nevada Medicaid needs additional funding to validate the model and assess the impact to other Medicaid supplemental payment programs. We respectfully request your support for agenda items 110 and 111 on the ARPA funding list. The NHA also recognizes that Nevada Medicaid needs additional staff to fulfill its duties. We ask that you give thoughtful consideration to item 108 and 109, also on the ARPA funding list. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller, you're
good morning,
unmuted.
Mr.
Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Anna Marie Binder. I'm a mother to 6 children in our state, 3 of which are special abilities. I'm a parental member of the Children's Advocacy Alliance, a member of our Early Education Advisory Data Subcommittee, an appointed member to the Governor's Behavioral and Mental Health Advisory Council, and a proud CASA volunteer. I am speaking today to advocate for the funding to the historical investments in your agenda today, which are many and vast. My youngest son would not be able to speak at 7 years old if it was not for early intervention services that began for him at 1 year old. My 13-year-old is also diagnosed with deranged mood disorder, among others, and mental health and well-being is very important to us as we are directly affected by the resources. When we help those who need it most, we are doing the work of the people, and I have vowed my time in advocating for them. I also would like to thank Tesla for its generous donation to education with regard to Agenda Item H, Home Needs Nevada. I echo the thank you for all that is being done for our communities with these investments, and also echo Mr. Daly's time for 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Chair Dennis, members of the committee, good morning, if it's still morning. For the record, my name is Sasha Stevenson. I address you today in my capacity as a board member of the Governor's Office of Economic Development and as chair of the GoEd Board Subcommittee on Startups and Tech Innovation. Over the last decade, GoEd has played a significant role in fostering growth in the state's entrepreneurial ecosystems in Las Vegas and Reno. The substantial progress in the sector, however, brings a need for programs aimed at developing and retaining science, technology, engineering, and math talent for the state. I want to commend the committee for its consideration of GoEd's proposed talent retention program to create internship opportunities for Nevada students. The goal of this program is to increase retention of the thousands of talented graduates from Nevada universities, aligning directly with the governor's administration and economic development goals. Additionally, the program aims to identify and amplify talent of historically underrepresented populations, including women and first-generation college students who have an aptitude and interest in STEM fields. The proposed program will create new paths for attaining necessary training, social capital, and equitable opportunities in their chosen fields. This needed infrastructure will not only make Nevada more attractive to startup technology companies, but also encourage graduates to remain in and contribute to Nevada's economic growth. The sooner we can increase talent retention for the state, the better. I applaud GoEd for working so closely with the Attorney General and his office to use settlement funds to empower businesses to retain talent within the state, especially in the communities that are typically underserved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Angel Barboza, and I'm currently a student at the University of Nevada, Reno. I just wanted to call in and say ditto to the previous caller for support of the talent retention program. For students like me, this really helps to find ways to enter the workforce, enter the professional career while having an opportunity to both learn and get paid. It helps just improve my development, refine my skills, and just apply myself into the real world workforce before I can, finish my degree. So internships like this are amazing for students. I highly suggest them to underclassmen as well, and therefore I strongly encourage the passing of this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller, you are unmuted. Please begin.
maybe this is me in the queue. This is Jan Jones Blackhurst. For the record, ditto on two things. First, I would like to thank Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, Chair Dennis, and Vice Chair Maggie Carlton. You guys have been extraordinary, and we've all been beneficiaries of some of the legislation you've passed over the last years. And I, for one, will miss you all terribly, and you're going to be hard to replace. Second ditto is to Nevada Donor Network. I serve as their chairwoman. And in addition to providing organs for all Nevadans, but particularly underserved Nevadans who have no opportunity right now, it will also generate $356 million annually in revenues, close to 3,000 jobs, and $15 million in tax revenues. I appreciate your support of 116 and 117. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next caller.
Chair Dennis, good morning. For the record, Bill Arndt, Deputy Director, City of Las Vegas. Ditto for speaking in support of item 21 for E, the Go Ahead Work Program, Talent Retention Program. This is very important for our startup community. And also ditto for support of the Nevada Donor Network. Thank you for your consideration of these items.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Hello, my name is Shelly Speck. That's SHELLYSPECK, and I live in Gardnerville, Nevada. I am providing testimony today on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance and the Nevada Strong Start Coalition. Autism affects 1 in 50 people. With early intervention, a sizable amount of children diagnosed with autism are able to achieve normal educational and intellectual functioning by 7 years of age. These children can be mainstreamed into regular classrooms and can be indistinguishable from their peers and social and emotional functioning. Others with more severe cases can improve their quality of life with therapy and early intervention. Although Medicaid is covering the primary therapy for many children with autism, Nevada is serving far fewer children because of a workforce shortage, slow and low reimbursement rates, and disputes over how much to pay therapists. As children languish on waiting lists, their progress and potential hang in the balance. If children with autism and developmental delays are treated early on, they have a better chance of becoming an independent, tax-paying citizen. If we don't provide treatment, they will need some level of support for the rest of their lives. There is a huge cost savings incentive by providing early intervention. Many children who are getting services for the first time have spent an average of 310 days on a wait list. This is in part due to the fact that the state of Nevada simply doesn't have enough of these therapists to do the work, especially in rural areas. With the provision of an early intervention personnel center, we can provide our specialists with adequate training opportunities and make certain our providers are supported. This will ensure less burnout for when they are most needed, which is at the critical stage for children ages 0 to 5. Then our children will be set up on the right trajectory for entering kindergarten so that our support staff won't be overloaded in the school districts and teacher retention will be obtainable. My belief is that overall, increased early intervention support will help our children, teachers, schools, and communities. You ask yourself, what can I do to prevent another child from waiting another day for services and support? When you leave here today, please make a commitment to providing funding for early intervention services and support for our children, specifically items D45, D46, D89, D90, as well as D1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Dennis and members of the Interim Finance Committee. My name is Brett Salmon, BRETT-SALMON. I'm the President and CEO of the Nevada Healthcare Association and the Nevada Center for Assisted Living. We represent assisted living and nursing facilities throughout Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of ARPA Work Program number 91, the Assisted Living and Nursing Facility Workforce Initiative. I want to thank Governor Sisolak and his office and also Director Whitley and his office for working with us closely on this issue. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all of us, and fortunately, most of us have not been on the front lines having to fight to protect others from the deadly virus. Long-term caregivers stepped directly into the fray to protect Nevada's most vulnerable population throughout the pandemic. And Nevada has had one of the lowest COVID-19 related nursing home mortality rates in the nation because of the dedicated work of our caregivers. Fighting the pandemic and recovering from the pandemic has created caregiver shortages in long-term care, and recovery is going to take lots of resources that we currently do not have. This workforce funding opportunity will help us continue providing care for our residents so we can get more stable funding addressed in the next legislative session. Thank you for supporting this long-term care workforce initiative.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller, you're unmuted. Please begin.
Members of the Interim Finance Committee, my name is Jacob Atwood. I'm the administrator of Marquis Centennial Hills, a skilled nursing facility here in Las Vegas. I know that you are listening to many important topics today, but I thank you for refocusing your mind at this time so that you can not only hear, but also understand my support of work program number 91 for skilled nursing facilities and assisted living facilities. I'm proud to have been born and raised in this great state of Nevada, and home will always mean the hills, sage, and pines of Nevada to me. We have a lot to be proud of, but I know we can do better when it comes to ensuring that the healthcare of Nevada's most vulnerable population is properly funded. These are funds from the American Rescue Plan. I'm not aware of any other industry where the infrastructure is more in need of rescuing than that of our long-term care industry. Like everyone else, we were adversely impacted financially over the past 2.5 years, even more so. Not only did we experience increased costs as a result of COVID in all aspects of our industry, but we had unfunded mandates thrown at us, causing us to be required to spend hundreds of thousands more without any increase in revenues. You don't have to be an accounting major to understand that in an industry with already very small margins, if you have large increase in costs with no increase in revenue, you're set up for failure. With these circumstances, it's no wonder that hundreds of nursing homes across the country have already closed their doors for good. Is this really the state that we want to perpetuate for the industry that cares for our most vulnerable population? I'm hoping that we in Nevada have the foresight to not let this happen. I truly am thankful for your consideration of agenda item number 91, but if I'm being honest, this isn't even half of what is truly needed and what I know our Healthcare Association has requested. Unfortunately, this desperately needed Band-Aid isn't even close to covering the lasting wounds of the last 2.5 years. Please avoid short-sightedness with the needs of our industry. Historically speaking, Nevada's skilled nursing facility Medicaid rate has only had minor increases over the past 20 years, with most years seeing no increases, even though costs have increased every year. Again, this is not sustainable, and this is short-sighted. Looking ahead to the legislative session, please don't add a few percentages and pat yourself on the back. Please fully fund the current Medicaid cost gap and plan for automatic needed annual increases. We care for the often forgotten. Please don't forget about our vulnerable senior population. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Hello, Chair Dennis and members of the committee. My name is Andre Way, and I'm the State Director for Silver State Equality. I'm speaking with you on behalf of agenda item D118 regarding the transfer of $500,000 from the Lost Revenue Reserves category to the American Rescue Plan Act state agency allocations category to fund a statewide study on youth homelessness that would explicitly include LGBTQ+ youth through the Department of Health and Human Services. The cost of the study was checked by several researchers and homelessness advocates across the nation for fidelity. The reason for the request is to pragmatically address the issue of youth experiencing homelessness across the state of Nevada. After spending months speaking with State Department heads, county level officials, and county administrators, it is unfortunately clear that we do not have an understanding of the real prevalence and scope of youth homelessness, what departments and agencies have jurisdictions over this population, or the amount of housing and funding needed to end youth homelessness. If no one has any information at their fingertips on how they are providing housing and services to youth experiencing homelessness, then we will never be able to solve this issue. This study will eventually provide stakeholders, researchers, advocates, and other decision makers with better insight into the problem that annual point in time counts and other studies based on characteristics of these youth do not address. We need to know how youth are navigating or avoiding systems, what their experiences are when they do, and what the true housing inventory is across the state, compared with the number of youth in need of housing and shelter. This study can give us this information. In short, this is a small amount of money to conduct a 2-year study that can inform everyone on what interventions and at what scale to implement to further address the issue of youth homelessness. A study of this scope and magnitude has not been done and is very much needed to provide us with much needed data to help these young people currently experiencing homelessness and those who are at risk now and unfortunately in the future. Thank you in advance for your support to fund this study as outlined in agenda item D118. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Dennis and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jeff Saling, S-A-L-I-N-G. I'm here to say ditto to support of item E21, GOED's work program number C60305. I'm coming at it from 4 capacities. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Startup NB, Nevada's statewide nonprofit accelerator. As partner in 3 venture capital funds that makes investments in Nevada high-growth companies. As a member, along with Sasha Stevenson of the GOED Subcommittee on Startups and Venture Capital, and as an educator, I teach at the College of Engineering at UNR. And from all 4 of those perspectives, I can't say loudly or earnestly enough that I'd appreciate your consideration and support of item E21, the work and talent retention program that GOED put before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Hello, for the record. Hello, for the record, my name is Maynard Fries with Cure SMA. We represent Nevada residents affected by a rare disease known as spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. Cure SMA supports the proposal related to newborn screening funding, and we urge this committee and the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services to earmark those and other available funds to immediately implement newborn screening of SMA. I know this committee deals with numbers all the time. Let me emphasize 4 numbers with you today. The first number is 2, as in 2 years old. Babies born with SMA type 1, the most common form of the disease, often died before reaching age 2. The devastating disease severely weakens muscles in every part of the body to the point where the disease shuts down your ability to swallow, move, and breathe. The next number I'll reference is 62,000. That is the number of Nevada residents who are SMA carriers. If both parents are SMA carriers, every child they have together has a 25% chance of having SMA. Next, the number 3. That is how many life-saving SMA treatments the FDA has approved and are now available. If a baby with SMA is diagnosed at birth and starts a treatment before symptoms, they can survive and live full lives. The final number is 48. That is the number of states that currently screen for SMA through newborn screening. In those states, babies receive an immediate diagnosis, which allows them to start treatment before irreversible muscle damage begins. Those success stories are happening almost everywhere, in 48 states, in fact, but not Nevada. Nevada is one of only 2 non-SMA screening states, despite a 2019 Nevada law that should have meant SMA screening started this past July. Please take whatever action necessary to implement newborn screening of SMA. The health and well-being of Nevada babies born with SMA depends on it. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Chair Dennis and members of the Interim Finance Committee, my name is Doug Irwin for the record, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Entrepreneurial Development at EDON. I'm here to also comment on item E21, the Talent Retention Program supported by GoEd. I've been working in the startup and technology community in Northern Nevada for almost a decade, and I can tell you this is one of the most significant things we can do to support our startup community. I don't know if you know this, but startups are responsible for all new net job growth, and they're the engines of the future, or engines of innovations that are creating the jobs of the future that will help us develop a resilient and thriving Northern Nevada economy. However, we are competing globally for the top talent, and one way to help our community grow and retain talent is through internships. And I think this is especially true in the technical fields, which are in the highest demand. And it's also critical that we create opportunities for all Nevadans, especially women and underrepresented groups. Internships are critical to developing the talent pipelines for our community, and I think we've got a great group. I've worked with Katia and UNR on the Packer internship program for many years. We've placed dozens of interns in early stage companies over the past 7 years. This new initiative really expands her great work statewide and helps us focus on our greatest need, which is technology jobs. One great example of this type of work is a company called Bombora. It started with just a couple of people many years ago. They worked with UNR in the grant program and now have over 50 people, about 18 of which were data scientists that came through the intern program. You should all see a letter of support from them in your email. So just in summary, this program addresses a critical need of providing key talent for the area. And I can just say personally, when I was in college, I was fortunate enough to have a mother who worked at Motorola, so I had an inroad there, but I worked every summer at Motorola and Microsoft, and when I took, it gave me such a leg up in my work and working in technology. So thank you again for all the hard work and your consideration in support of item E21. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
My name is Stephanie Alcantar from North Las Vegas. I am testifying in support of the proposal to transfer funding to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health for newborn screening, testing, and reporting activities. I urge the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services to use these funds to implement newborn screening of spinal muscular atrophy, also known as SMA. My son Aiden was born in 2021 with SMA, a rare genetic disease that causes debilitating muscle loss and is usually fatal by age 2 if not treated properly or on time. But because Nevada is one of the only 2 states that does not screen for SMA, we would not receive our son's diagnosis for another 23 days. As we were anxiously waiting for test results to come back each day that passed, I was unsure if my son was going to wake up to see the following day. Time is everything with the disease. Every day that passes with SMA, babies like my son lose motor neurons needed for muscle strength. Once lost, those motor neurons can never be regenerated. For example, when my son was born, he breathed fine, and he was born and showed some arm and leg movement. Within a few days, Aiden lost his ability to swallow, his breathing grew very labored, and he stopped moving his arms and his legs. There are now treatments for SMA. They do not reverse SMA damage caused before taking the treatment, which is why newborn screening is so important in order to catch an early diagnosis and give these babies the treatment that they need to thrive. Aiden is doing better since getting treatment at 1 month and 5 days old. He can now sit independently, has decent upper body strength, and no longer requires permanent ventilation or a G-tube for feeding. However, he lost so much strength before getting his diagnosis. This could have been prevented had our state screened for SMA. Muscle loss happens so quickly with the disease, and no child should have to suffer when their life is barely starting. I hope that these funds can be used to implement newborn screening of SMA. It will give future kids born with SMA their best shot at success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Thank you, Chair. If you have recently joined the call and would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning, Senator Chair Dennis, Vice Chair Maggie Carlton. This is Dora Martinez. I just want to say thank you for all, and the rest of the committee, my apologies. I just want to say thank you so much for your past, during the 81st session, for passing AB 121. This Saturday, the early voting, I'm going to help a young man with cerebral palsy to the pole and help him both. Even though there is an option to do it at home, he does not have an internet at home. And this, I'm helping him because I do know how to work the system, and his PCA won't be able to take him there, the personal care attendant. So I do ditto the Personal Care Association agenda and the AARP. So thank you so much and take care. And thank you to my Representative Assemblywoman Rock and Roll number 27, Benita Thompson. Have a great day. Go vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's. Do we have any other callers?
Let me check for you, Chair. As a last call, if you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 on your phone now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers wishing to give public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Las Vegas. I missed one. So if we can go to Las Vegas, when you're ready, go ahead.
Alrighty. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. For the record, I'm Associate Dean of College Engineering, UNLV. I'm here to comment on the Startup Technology Industry Talent Retention Program. I heard my colleagues and good community friends from the North comment on this program. This program will be implemented through internships. Internship experiences really provide very valuable opportunities for our this program, computer science engineering students, to develop real-world technical and teamwork skills, build professional networks, and find mentors. Students who complete internships often enter the workforce after graduation with relevant experiences and that they need or can highlight during a job search. This program actually would place students to work somewhere between 14 to 16 weeks, depending on the semester, whether it's in the spring, fall, or summer. This really provides students exposure to computer science engineering while, more importantly, enabling the local Nevada employer to fill short-term project needs. One example I can share with you is that a local 3D printing company that we just visited in the summer. They really needed somebody, were ready to take in on interns to do some programming and engineering work for their 3D printing machines, and also need somebody to help with their customer services. Another good example I can share with you is that local unmanned vehicle company and another autonomous driving company we visited just right before the pandemic. They all were ready to take in our interns to do some computer science engineering related work. And then go back to the UNLV side. Last academic year, we actually graduated a total of 395, almost 400 students. And half of them actually from computer science, electrical engineering, computer engineering majors. We anticipate that number will go up to 400 or more this year. So even if you look at the current students that are graduating in the fall 2022, we're looking at 11 students in computer engineering, 81 in computer science, and 16 in electrical, and of course some other 200 students also in other engineering disciplines. So our really goal is to get every and each of the graduating students the opportunity to have some internship experience before graduation. So this much needed and much anticipated, appreciated financial support will empower us to make that goal closer to a reality. And this is going to have a huge impact on our Nevadan students pursuing STEM degrees, our local high-tech economy, and of course, our state as a whole. And also importantly, this program has this diversity and equity and inclusiveness issues into consideration. So I'm sure this program will serve our female and underrepresented groups very well. And really thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a second public comment period at the end. So we are going to now go to item number C on the agenda, the Statement of the American Rescue Plan Act. And I'm going to ask Mr. Leiser if he'd come and present the statement of the ARPA Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund obligation and remaining balance.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, Vice Chair Carlton, members of the Interim Finance Committee. My name is Brody Leiser with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. I will walk through Agenda Item C, which is the Statement of the American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund obligations and remaining reserve balances. The statement can be found beginning in Volume 1 of the meeting packet, beginning with the summary sheet on page 7. If all items submitted today are approved, which total approximately $754.3 million, the remaining unobligated balance of coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds would be approximately $96.9 million. If approved, the remaining $250 million reserved for the Home Means Nevada initiative would be fully allocated, and the remaining lost revenue reserve balance would be approximately $48.9 million, and the main reserve balance would be approximately $48 million. Pages 8 through 13 of the meeting packet detail the obligations approved to date. There were 143 work programs facilitating 77 requests submitted for consideration by the committee today, which began on page 14 of the meeting packet, that, as previously mentioned, would obligate approximately $754 million in funding authority. However, items D124 and D125, shown on page 16 of the packet, were requested by the Governor's Finance Office to be withdrawn from consideration. I believe Mr. Thorley will note these as well when the committee moves on to Agenda Item D. The request to withdraw the items was received after the statement had been finalized, and these items will be removed from the version that's presented at the next meeting of the Interim Finance Committee. In a few minutes, and with the chair's direction and permission, I will discuss a separate exhibit that's posted online for this meeting. And at that time, we'll generally describe and summarize the requests submitted for the committee's consideration today. On pages 18 through 20 of the meeting packet, the breakdown statement for select obligations of coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds is presented. There are 5 items on page 22 of the meeting packet. Under the section for allocations of the $100 million in authority for state agencies that were approved by the Governor's Finance Office and did not require approval of the IFC as indicated on the statement. These 5 items are on the list with dates of September 12th through October 7th, 2022. And Chair Dennis, that concludes my remarks specific to the statement.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the members have a question on the statement? Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, sir, for the presentation. And I'm just curious as to funds that we've already obligated. Do you have any idea how much of that has already been spent?
Thank you. For the record, Brody Leiser with the Fiscal Analysis Division. We're currently working on reconciling the total obligations that have been and the amounts that have actually been spent to date through fiscal year 2022. And I am frantically trying to pull up a document that I believe I can give you a little bit better of an answer to your question, Assemblywoman Titus. I apologize for the delay here, Mr. Chairman. This is an approximate amount that I know that there were a few lingering transactions that were posted in fiscal year 2022, but of the $2.7 billion, I believe that approximately $447 million was expended in fiscal year 2022. And that does not reflect expenditures that have occurred in fiscal year 2023 to date. So those would need to be added to that amount. And the other thing that I would point out that's in relation to your question, Dr. Titus, is that we are working with the Governor's Finance Office to reconcile the final fiscal year 2022 expenditures, as there may have been items or amounts obligated for expenditure in FY22 that were not fully needed, and therefore potentially there's some savings that could be reobligated or repurposed from those initial obligations.
Follow up with that, Mr. Chair, and thank you. That's exactly where I was leading, because there is a time sensitive that we have to obligate these funds and then spend these funds, and I want to make sure that we're putting them to the best use if they're still. I don't want to leave them on the table if we don't have to. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just again for the record, Brody Leiser, Fiscal Analysis Division. I would add to that we are working and plan to bring at the next meeting of the IFC with regards to this statement updates to some of those items in fiscal year 22 so that we can reconcile the actual expenditures compared to the amounts obligated and hope to bring updated information at the next meeting of the IFC in that regard and along these very discussions.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, this is an informational only, so there's no vote required on this one. And we will now, actually, let me just make a comment on the agenda. We're going to go through the different items here as we go through the agenda, and I'll make one change when it comes to D on the order that we will do those in. However, just want to let our members know, and also for the audience, that we're going to take a lunch break at around 12:30. So we'll go through the items, and then when we get close to that, we'll take a break. On item D, due to significant number of requests on the agenda today to allocate ARPA coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, fiscal staff have prepared two tables that provide high-level summary information regarding their request. These tables are titled Exhibit A and Exhibit B. For committee members, the tables can be found at the end of your highlight packet. For members of the public, the tables can be found on the exhibit table at the entrance of the committee room as you came in, or online at on the IFC website. List D, which is the ARPA work program list, includes 143 individual work programs. When related work programs are combined, List D includes 77 separate requests to allocate the total of $757.1 million in the coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds. This represents 27.6% of the $2.7 billion that was provided to the state of Nevada through the coronavirus state fiscal recovery fund. Exhibit A organizes the 77 distinct ARPA requests into 8 broad categories in order to see at a high level how the requested coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds allocations would be used. Exhibit B shows the number of positions that are being requested to support the various programs recommended to be funded with coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds. In total, 217 positions are being requested, of which 160 would be permanent state positions, while 57 would be temporary contract positions. The position table provides information about the types of positions being requested and the purpose for the positions. So I will now ask Mr. Leiser to briefly walk the committee through those two, and we're going to do the two exhibits first, and then I will ask for which ones we want to pull. So, Mr. Leiser, if you would run through those.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. For the record, Brody Leiser, Fiscal Analysis Division, and thank you for the introductory remarks. You covered almost all my notes, and I appreciate it. So. As Chair Dennis said, for those that may be listening online, or if you'd like to pull the exhibits up on your computers, on the website or web page for today's meeting, under the meeting materials section, there are the two exhibits, Exhibit A and Exhibit B, that Chair Dennis referred to. First, I'll walk the committee through Exhibit A, and as Chair Dennis indicated, this is a summary of all the requests before the committee today, your fiscal staff prepared this table to summarize the requests in a broader manner that may provide committee members, state agencies, and members of the public with a more digestible format than the agenda item list. As Chair Dennis indicated, items have been summarized under 8 categories. And if you look at the first page of Exhibit A towards the top, there's a summary table. Before the committee today, there's $250 million relating to housing, approximately $164 million relating to computer system and hardware modernization projects, $116.6 million approximately for healthcare programs and services, approximately $108 million for water resource management, approximately $41.6 million for capital projects, approximately $41.4 million for workforce and economic development support, approximately $24.3 million categorized under state government, tribal, and miscellaneous, and approximately $11 million under studies and assessments. Following that table towards the top of page 1 is a detailed breakout of each of the categories in which the items submitted for consideration today have been categorized. And I won't go through each of these, but you'll see that it includes the category description, the agenda items, a brief description of each item, along with a dollar amount. As previously noted, items D124 and D125 were requested to be withdrawn. These items are listed on page 4 of Exhibit A under the studies and assessments categories. Chair Dennis, I would like to make one point of clarification for those that may compare Exhibit A to the ARPA statement that we just discussed, and specifically in regard to the difference between the total amounts on the two tables that I have referenced for consideration at today's meeting. Exhibit A shows a total of approximately $757 million, whereas I referenced a figure of $754.3 million when presenting the statement. There are 9 requests before the committee today to allocate funds under the $100 million of authority that was already set aside for state agency allocations at the April 7th meeting of the IFC. Since that authority is already shown as an obligation on the ARPA summary statement, the 9 requests do not impact the balance on that statement. However, they are accounted for on Exhibit A. So those requests total approximately $2.7 million and account for the difference between the totals presented on Exhibit A and the amount reflected on the ARPA statement for consideration by the committee today. Again, this is just a point of clarification. Exhibit B, as Chair Dennis indicated, is a summary of the 217 new positions that are being requested to be established through the work program submitted under Agenda Item D. Given the previous interest that was expressed by the committee in positions being funded with ARPA dollars, and again, due to the number and magnitude of the request before the committee today, this table was compiled to illustrate the total number of positions being requested to be established, as well as to demonstrate that other funding sources may be required in the future if these new positions are needed beyond the date in which ARPA funding would be obligated through. So on Exhibit A, I'll briefly walk through a summary of the table, going through the columns from left to right. First is a reference to the agenda item number. These are all on list D, so that's D36 as an example. For the first one is agenda item D36. Next column is the department or division in which the positions are being requested, along with then the budget account number and the budget account name, a position title column, the number of positions being requested, whether or not the position is a state position or a contract position, a brief description of the position, and then the two final columns I'll give a brief description of. The column titled Date in which funding has been allocated through. What that represents is based on supporting information submitted with these work programs, the date in which ARPA dollars have been identified to fund these positions through. That's specific to the ARPA Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Funds. And the final column represents fiscal year in which the position funding is anticipated to be needed through, meaning how long the position itself is expected to be needed. So to walk through an example of how those two columns work, I would actually ask you to look at the second row on this exhibit. It's D38. This is for the Governor's Office of Finance for an administrative services officer position. You'll see in the column where it says date in which funding has been allocated through, June 30th, 2023. Based on the information that was submitted with the work program, the ARPA funding has been designated to support that position through the end of fiscal year 2023. In the column to the right of that, the date in which the position is anticipated to be needed through, while the ARPA funding has been identified to fund the position through the end of fiscal year 2023, this position has been identified as being needed through fiscal year 2025. So at some point in time, if that position continues, a funding source will need to be identified, whether that's the use of additional ARPA dollars or some other funding source. So, Mr. Chair, that would provide my remarks summarizing and walking through the table. I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to do that for the committee members and members of the public that may be listening.
Appreciate that. It helps clarify because there's so many things on today. That's really helpful, that chart. So what I'm going to do though, before I ask and we pull anything from D, I'm going to ask the governor's office if they could come up. We have some specific questions related to the information that we just got from Mr. Leiser. I would think probably finance. That's fine. Right. Although if you feel a need, you can jump up and yeah. She's lonely. Yeah, she's kind of lonely. She might need some backup there. No. Welcome. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Carlton if she will begin the questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And this is, we've all been talking about this, and I want to thank Mr. Leiser for condensing this down and makes it easy for all of us to kind of work from the same sheet of music, if you will. And congratulations on the job and welcome to IFC. And good luck. So with that, as we move through this unprecedented amount of money that's going to make huge structural change in the state. So, we're all going to have those other side of the coin questions. It's like we want to understand some of the methodology behind how you've analyzed that there'll be sufficient unobligated funds moving forward to support a number of these ongoing projects. So if you could update us on that, we'd appreciate it. And then we'll do these one at a time. It makes it tough if I throw them all at you at once. So if you could just kind of share with us, how you're planning on moving forward with this.
Thank you so much for the question. For the record, my name is Amy Stevenson, Director of the Governor's Finance Office. Through you, Chair Dennis to Vice Chair Carlton. For most of the these ARPA projects, we did work programs for the full amount of the project to ease tracking and to provide transparency. On some of the projects, we did do work programs for the current biennium amount with the direction that anything past fiscal year 24 and beyond would be included in the 24-25 budget. That would be built into the budget. We're tracking these in GFO and work regularly with LCB staff to coordinate our tracking. So we do intend to bring it forward in the budget.
Thank you. That's very helpful because we don't want to start something that families really need and then find out that we could run into a speed bump in the future. So as you've gone through that methodology, you can confirm to us that a number of these requests submitted for consideration and the provisions that you're making sure that the dollars will be available, not necessarily in the first biennium, because we're looking at a second biennium also. So that you're tracking it all the way out through the whole process.
For the record, Amy Stevenson, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I guess... and that's pretty much Exhibit A. So on Exhibit B, with these employees, which I'm very happy to see, and we know it's been very tough to get folks with the vacancy rate that we have, and it's good to see that we're going to invest in bringing some employees in. But I guess I need to understand really more under the policies and authority, payroll cost, how this is going to work. Because you're obligating them past the deadline of 2024. So I know there's a difference between allocated and obligated and how you're going to process that. Have you been able to confirm that these are going to be allowable expenditures? Because we know we're very litigious and somebody's going to figure out that they can come make an argument with the state that you're not following the guidelines, the FAQs, when it comes to these dollars. So I just want to make sure that we've double-checked to make sure we are good with spending these dollars the way they are. I think CPAs are a lot like lawyers. You get 3 or 4 of them in a room, and you're going to get 5 or 6 different answers. So, but on this one, I think there's pretty much consensus that we have to be very careful how we move forward on this.
Thank you so much for that question. Again, for the record, Amy Stevenson, Director of Governor's Finance Office, through you, Chair Dennis, to Vice Chair Carlton. It is the GFO's understanding that costs for positions funded by ARPA are allowable during the performance period up to December 2026, and that the existence of positions that are budgeted against that funding source constitutes obligation of the funds. We continue to monitor monitor the guidance and work with our federal and audit partners to ensure compliance with this rule. We also collaborate with other states. We also document the commitment of these funds through the notice of awards that we give out to the agency.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, this will be my follow-up on this. So the authority that you're using is based on the federal FAQs and what other states are doing. Has anybody from the federal government or anywhere along the line confirmed this so that you have something in writing moving forward saying, yes, this was an allowable use? Because we see this as a future issue.
Thank you again. Amy Stevenson, Director of GFO, for the record. I do have someone from our ARPA team online that can help with that has been dealing with the federal government, Ms. Shauna Tilley.
Okay. Ms. Tilley?
Yeah, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. So, pardon me because I was multitasking and listening to the question. Can you please, Shauna Tilley, for the record,
Sure,
please repeat your last
sure,
question?
Ms. Tilley. We just, it's great to put it on testimony, but I was born in Missouri, show me state. I need to see a document. I want to know for sure that we're doing the right thing and we are not hiring folks and not being able to pay them or putting ourselves in an awkward position later on. I've dealt with these FAQs and CHAP money, and sometimes they can change on you. So what authority, what policy do we have on record that states that as these dollars are allocated and obligated for these employees, they can be used past that December 24 date?
In answer to the one part of your question that you asked, do we have a letter or a specific statement to us that says this is allowable? We do not. We're working as best we can with, as you say, the FAQs, the final rule, the guidance. There's updated guidance on compliance and reporting that's coming out pretty much every quarter. When we do our quarterly reporting, the guidance is being updated with that. The final rule actually has several references to position costs or payroll costs and associated benefits, and mentions the time period between December 31st, 2024 and December 31st, 2026 in relation to those position costs. So it's very clear that the Treasury intends there to be position-related costs incurred by recipients of these funds during that performance period timeframe. So based on that and the fact that we consider it to be obligated when we have a position that's budgeted, but certainly we are further cementing that obligation by issuing notices of allocation to the agencies where we are allocating funds for positions. And we believe that that constitutes an obligation. We have no indication that there is any contradiction to that. And we, as Director Stevenson said, we are working with other states and with our partners in trying to make sure that we're in compliance and following the best guidance that we have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I think there's still probably going to be a little bit of a difference of opinion. And the thing that comes to the back of my mind is we're obligating a future legislature, which we cannot do. The policies and the monies that you're spending right now are going to be obligating it out past how the interim and how the budget cycle works. So I have concerns that those FAQs could possibly change, and I just want to make sure that everybody's watching it and on the same page. I believe some CPAs believe that you really can't do it this way, so I just want to make sure we're very careful about hiring folks and being able to move these programs forward. So thank you very much for the answer. Thank you, GFO. That takes care of all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to see if anybody has any questions. I know I have, let me address you correctly, Super Rock Star Benitez Thompson. You have a question, and then we'll go to Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So the question was, I know that Assemblywoman Carlton's question was specific to the staff positions, and we heard that report. It looks like there are 3 contracts that run into 2027. So do we have kind of along the same questions for the contracts that run past that 2026 guideline? Are we feeling solid about those?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Amy Stevenson, Director of GFO, through you, Chair Dennis, to Benitez Thompson, Rockstar, whoever you are. No, yes, we are solid, and we have it's going forward in the budget, so we're recognizing that we have to find other funds, and we are looking at that. So yes, we are solid.
I believe it's Super Rockstar.
Super Rockstar. I'm sorry.
So let's go to Assemblywoman Titus, and then we'll go to Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for their presentation. I appreciate that. I want to follow up with what Vice Chair Carlton had mentioned about obligating future sessions, future legislators. So if we do this and vote for this today, is there a possibility, and this is probably more for staff than anything else, can we have is there a clawback where we can actually, if this money is not expended or future legislative bodies decide these positions are no longer needed, is that something that it's possible to do with these funding? And if so, what would be the time frame that we would have to do that?
So, yes, we have staff that'll answer.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that legal staff address this.
Okay, who do we have from legal here today?
So specifically, I'm concerned about the possibility obligating future bodies and the possibility for clawbacks on this funding. We don't know what's going to happen in future election cycles, who will be sitting here. We know several of us here won't be here, and just wondering what that looks in our obligations.
Let's start with Mr.
Well, I have a
Thorley.
follow-up to that while she's looking for that, if I might, before we go on.
Well, Mr. Thorley can address.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal. From a budget perspective, I think I can provide an answer, again, not from the legal perspective. So the legislature, when it convenes in 2023, will have the opportunity to establish a budget for the 2023-25 biennium. And so certainly the legislature, through its power to establish a budget, could vote on a budget that includes a reallocation of this funding. Now, if the funding's already spent and out the door, then that couldn't be reallocated. But if it was obligated somewhere else and the legislature decided they wanted to re-obligate it for a different purpose or a different agency, that could certainly happen through the legislative process. Also through the interim process, through work program revisions. Work program revisions could be submitted from the executive branch to reallocate the money to different purposes. So I think those are the two ways in which money that's been obligated for a specific purpose or program could be re-obligated for a different purpose or program.
And along that same line, while we're still looking for legal, to the governor's office, I've asked this question before, and we're looking at 217 new positions, 160 or so, which would actually be full-time positions. Wondering what the current vacancy rate is in our positions now for the state of Nevada. I'm hearing it's like 35%.
For the record, Amy Stevenson, GFO Director. Through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblywoman Titus. Assemblywoman Titus, sorry. The average vacancy rate across the state right now, as of October 2nd is when I last had it, was 24% statewide.
Thank you. That's definitely an improvement. Thank you.
Hi, excuse me. So this is Jessica Demmer with the LCB Legal Division. I can give something of an answer to Assemblywoman Titus's question. So generally speaking, in terms of clawing back funding, the answer generally is yes, unless it's prohibited by a provision of the U.S. or the Nevada Constitution. The Nevada Supreme Court has generally held that one legislature cannot, by ordinary legislation, bind or control in any manner subsequent legislatures. In addition, the Nevada legislature is free to enact any law that is not clearly prohibited by some provision of the Constitution of the United States or the Nevada Constitution. So subject only to the federal and state constitutions, it's within a given legislature's province to enact measures as it sees fit from session to session without being limited by the acts of previous legislatures.
I guess my concern, thank you. I guess my concern is that this isn't really an NRS or a bill or a legislation that we're passing. This is a budgetary items, line items, and I'm wondering if there's a difference since there wasn't. I understand that we can't pass a bill that obligates future legislative people. Is there a difference when we're looking at a budget item? I know that we vote on the budgets, and that's one of the things that we do early in the session, and so perhaps that's where it allows us via NRS to do that clawback.
So my answer would be yes, even if it's a budget item, I believe the legislature could do something in that regard.
Okay, let's go to Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking at the table. It was as of today, like all the positions that are being requested today. And so my question is how many other positions are out there? Because it looks like this is just a snapshot of the items that are on today's agenda versus the other 1.x billion that we've spent. How many positions were in there? Thank you.
I think Mr. Leiser can answer that.
I tried to run away, but I was unsuccessful. For the record, my name is Brody Leiser. I'm with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau. This is not limited to coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds because there are other buckets of money that were approved through the ARPA Act. But I believe that I'm going to give an approximate number, but your fiscal staff has been trying to track this following each meeting of the IFC. And prior to this meeting, I believe that through actions of this body, 384 positions have been established with ARPA funding during this interim. And based on the information that we have summarized, that breaks out to, I'd have to run some numbers to see how that breaks out between contract staff and permanent state staff. But 384 is the approximate number of the positions that have been approved up to this point. And again, that does not include the 217 positions that are being requested to be established today.
Thank you. If I can follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So 384 positions through ARPA to date, plus 217. And of the 384, we're not sure which are contracts. So maybe it would be helpful to get a table of that after we finish with this meeting, because it sounds like you've been tracking it, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that. So that would be helpful.
Mr. Chair, through you to Senator Ganser, Sievers-Ganser, my apologies. Brody Leiser, for the record. Luckily, the spreadsheet has filters, so I believe I can give you that information now. For state positions of the 384, we have 107 positions. For contract staff, we have 166 positions. And if you do the arithmetic, that's not going to add up. We also have separated positions for the system of higher education and have identified 111 of positions for NSHE. Those three figures should add up to the 384.
Thank you. And I think earlier you said 57 of the 217 were contract positions today. 160 are permanent, and then there's another 57 of the 217.
Yeah, for the record, Brody Leiser, yes, that is correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to Assemblyman Hafen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I have to take a moment and thank staff. We got some very difficult questions, and frankly, I'm nervous today because we're spending $757 million potentially. So I just want to say thank you for what you have done to get us here today and to help us through this. And Madam Vice Chair, it's like you were reading my mind with some of your concerns. So thank you for that as well. The ARPA funds that we're looking at, and the additional, I think, $97 million roughly that will be remaining, that needs to be allocated by December 31st, 2024. Is that correct?
For the record, Amy Stevenson, GFO Director, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I know we've kind of heard the concerns of tying the next legislative body's hands to some of these programs, and I know there's a handful of items on this agenda that kind of concern me because of that. It's not that I disagree with spending the money on these programs, but there are items that are going to require the next body to make a decision on whether they want to continue the funding for that or not. And if they don't, and if the next executive budget, the next governor decides not to fund those, we would have wasted the funds that have already been expended. And so I'm going to have a question when people come up of, does this need to be handled within the next 4 or 5 months, or is this something that can wait until we convene in 2023? So we have all of those variables in front of us to really make an educated decision, especially since we're now looking at a recession coming up next year. And so it's a lot of money. It's a huge opportunity. And I'm just echoing the concerns of some of my other colleagues here. And so that will be one of my questions as we get through the items is do we need these funds immediately today, or can this wait for 4 or 5 months until the next legislative body can reconvene and take a look at this? And if you want to address that globally, feel free. If you want to wait until each item, that's totally fine as well. And Mr. Chair, I thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Bailey Bordelin, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Governor, for the record. We can certainly work through that on a case-by-case basis. I would say overall, globally, one of the exercises that we have taken very seriously at the state is what is an emergency today and what opportunity under the state's legal obligations and services that we are mandated to provide can we use ARP dollars to address those emergencies. So you see that across children's mental health. You will see that on forensic hospitals today. So there are issues where the state has an obligation and we have a legal duty to fund these regardless. And this is an incredible opportunity to get us through as far as we can. And they must be built into future governors' budgets because they are, in many cases, not choice, but statutory obligation that the state provides these services. So we can address that throughout, but I would say that is a global theme and exercise that we have gone through to ensure that we are meeting our duty as the state to meet the critical needs of our populations as they have increased throughout the last 2 years.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a brief statement, and I want to thank the Governor's Office and address Assemblyman Nathan's concerns. We have worked very, very closely together over the last 18 months. And if you remember at the end of the 2021 session, Senator Kekeffer sat at the end of this dais and said, okay, how are we going to work together to deal with these dollars? And the Governor's Office has worked very closely with this committee and the staff to make sure that when they do bring work programs to us, that they are absolutely necessary because they know how we feel. The legislature funds this state. The governor proposes a budget, but it is a legislatively approved budget when you vote on it in the end of May or beginning of June. So I want to thank them for working so closely with us and making sure that we address the most significant needs in the state. We can't wait till next June to deal with some of these needs. They need to be done now. It takes a while to get things done, and the last thing we want is children and families suffering because we want to wait and have a political debate during a legislative session. So I again want to congratulate them for all the work and thank them for actually partnering with us because they could have just sent stuff over and not had a conversation. But we talk every week, at least once or twice a week, to make sure these items are very important to the state.
Okay, we're going to go to Assemblyman Tolles.
Thank you so much, and I also want to echo the sentiments of thanking staff and from both the Governor's Office as well as LCB staff for all the work and the drop-down menus and the pages and pages of Excel spreadsheets. I can't even imagine. You must dream in that language on a regular basis. But I do think maybe it would help to have some clarity back to the overall timeline discussion, just so that we can understand, because it's we do have until as I think was previously stated, and I lost that page, but 2025, I believe, December 31st to allocate these funds. And I know the requests today, if I'm correct, are for FY 2023. And so they won't even begin to be allocated and obligated until 2023. So maybe helping this committee understand why we're making the vote today on that for funds that won't be allocated until 2023 versus later. Is that for planning purposes? Is that for, as we just heard, various obligations as opposed to being allocated, right now in 2022? I think just clarifying that for the committee would be helpful.
Thank you. For the record, Amy Stevenson, Director of Governor's Finance Office. So the funds need to be obligated by December 31st, 2024. And we are currently in fiscal year 23, so we are trying to implement some of this immediately right now. And then, as I stated earlier to Assembly or Vice Chair Carlton, the remainder will be budgeted for in 24 and 25.
Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So now we'll get into item D. We're going to talk about actually the items that we want to that we're going to pull. Let me make sure I'm going to ask Mr. Thorley to go over the work programs on List D and List E, as well as the informational items in List K that have been identified to be pulled for the discussion. And then once he is done, I'll ask members if there are any additional items on D, E, or K that you wish to have pulled. So let's go there.
Thank you, Mr.
Thorley.
Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll begin with List D, which includes 143 work programs. The first two, most of these have companion work programs, so many of them will be heard jointly. So the first two that have been identified to be pulled for discussion are D1 and D2, and those will be heard together. On to page 2 of List D. Item D9 will be pulled for discussion. That will be heard jointly with agenda item J. On to page 3 of List D. D13 and D14 will be heard together. Then on to page 7. 33 and 34 will be heard together, and there's 8 of them in this batch that all be heard together. So 33, 34, 41, 42, 106, 107, and 137 and 138. So those 8 work programs in List D will all be heard together. Again, that's 33, 34, 41, 42, 106, 107, 137, 138. All right, moving on to page 13 of List D. 61 and 62 will be heard together. 63 will also be pulled for discussion, and it will be heard along with agenda item K12B, which is on the informational items list. So 63 will be heard with K12B. Then jumping ahead to page 18, 85 and 86 will be heard together. On to page 19 and the top of page 20, 91, 92, and 93 will all be heard together. 94 and 95 will be heard together. And then 96 and 97 will be heard together. Jumping ahead to page 24 of List D, 112 and 113 will be pulled for discussion and heard together. On page 27, I'll remind the committee of something Mr. Leiser previously indicated. 124 and 125, those both work programs have been withdrawn by the Governor's Finance Office and will not be considered today. So 24 and 25 have been withdrawn, and that withdrawal request came after the agenda was posted, so it's not reflected on the list. On to page 28 of List D, and on 28 and the top of page 29, 130 and 131 will be heard together. 132 and 133 will be heard together. 134 has been identified to be pulled for discussion. That one does not have a companion work program. So 134. And that is everything on List D. I'll quickly go over the numbers again for everybody. On List D, it's 1 and 2, 9 to be heard with agenda item J, 13 and 14, 33, 34, 41, 42, 106, 107, 137, and 138, all heard together. 61 and 62. 63 heard with agenda item K12B. 85 and 86. 91, 92, and 93 together. 94 and 95. 96 and 97. 102 or 112 and 113. 130 and 131. 132 and 133, and lastly 134. That's everything on List D, and Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I'll move on to List E. So List E contains 62 work program revision requests as well as 4 reclassification requests. On the first page, item E5 will be heard together with E21. On page 4 of List E, item 22 has been withdrawn. Again, this withdrawal request was received after the agenda had been posted, so it's not reflected on the list. But item 22, which is work program C60757 from the Governor's Office of Economic Development, has been withdrawn. And Mr. Chair, those are all the items on List E. Let me just double check. I believe that's everything on List E. Then moving on to List K, which is the informational items list. K8-2, the quarterly report on the disproportionate share hospital supplemental payment program, will be pulled for discussion. And then, as I previously indicated, K12B, which is from the Division of Water Resources, notification of addition of $100 million in federal ARPA coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, transferred from the COVID-19 relief programs account to support 2 positions and a water conservation and infrastructure initiative. That will be heard jointly with D63. And those are all the items, Mr. Chair, from List D, E, and K.
Okay, now any additional items? I know there was several requests. Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had D 1718, D 13940, and K5.
18. So D 17, 18, 139, 140, and K5.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull D4 and E17 and 18.
So is that E4?
D.
Oh, D4. Okay, sorry. So D4.
And E17 and E18.
17, 18.
D3 will need to go with D4.
And because you want D4, we need to pull D3 because they go together. So we'll do D3 and 4. And so that was, okay, so that was D4, E17, 8, D3 and 4, and E17, 18. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to see pulled, please, 38 and 39.
D, 38,
D.
39. Yes, correct.
38, 39, D 43, 44, D 53, 54, and 116, 117. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to re-say those in here in just a second. What's the deal with it?
So 38 needs to go with 37.
So 38 is going to go with 37, so we need to pull 37 along with that 38, 39 request.
And then 39 goes with 40.
And 39 goes with 40. So it would be 37, 38, 39, 40. And then additionally, you requested 43, 44, 53, 54, and 116, 117. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's back up. I apologize. I only need, for me, it was just 39 and 40. Those were my concerns, not 37, 38.
Right, but they go together.
Right.
So 39 and 40 go together. 37.
Yeah, 39 and 40 go together, and 38 and 37, 38 go together.
Right. I had the extra numbers. 39, 40 is what I have concern about. Thank you.
Oh, so you don't want 30.
We already discussed ad nauseum the staffing positions, so I think we're good with just going with 39, 40. Thank you.
Okay, so 39, 40, not 38, 37. Okay. All right, let's see. Assemblyman Hafen.
D106, 107.
We already pulled that one.
Okay, thank you. I missed it.
Am I missing anybody?
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. I had a quick question just on, it's going to be D110, 111, just a quick question on the contract.
110, 111, is that? So D110 and 111. For Assemblyman Benitez Thompson. Okay, others. Let me make sure on my list that I got. Senator Neal, yes.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. I just wanted to pull E23. It seems to relate to D134, Department of Tourism.
Do we need to pull both of those?
Does she want to pull the one in
Do you want to pull D134, or is it just E23 that you want?
I just want to pull E23. D134 is already pulled.
Oh, okay. Right.
E23.
Okay. E23. Okay. Do you want to do that at the same time that we're doing 134?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other? Let's see. Yeah. So I think let's see. Some pneumatitis. I'm just going to restate yours because I don't know if we got it right. I have. Let's see. What did we did? 38, 39.
39, 40.
And, 39, 40. That's right. 39, 40, 43, 44, 53, 54, 116, 117. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. Did we miss any? Okay. So we're going to need a motion here, but I'm going to I can have Mr. Thorley state all the ones that we're pulling, and then we could do a motion to approve all the rest. Mr. Thorley.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. So I will read off the items that are being pulled for discussion. All the items that are not indicated will be included in the consent vote, except for the cases where there have been 3 withdrawal requests that I previously indicated. So list D, we have 1 and 2 heard together, 3 and 4 heard together, 9 heard with agenda item J, 13 and 14 together, 17 and 18 together, 33 and 34, 41 and 42, 106 and 107, 137 and 138, all 8 of those heard together, 39 and 40 together, 43 and 44 together, 53 and 54 together, 61 and 62, 63 heard with agenda item K12B, 85 and 86 heard together, 91, 92, and 93 all heard together, 94 and 95 heard together, 96 and 97 together, 110 and 111 together, 112 and 113 together, 116 and 117 together, 130 and 131 together, 132 and 133 together, 134 along with E23 heard together, and lastly on list D, 139 and 140. Moving on to list E, 5 and 20 heard together. 5 and 21, thank you. Heard together, 17, 18, and again 23 in list D, which will be heard with D134 as I previously indicated. On list K, 5, 8B2, and 12B, which will be heard with D63. And if I missed any, please let me know.
Do we need to, since they withdrew 22, does that need to be in anything?
Yeah, the withdrawal of E22 and D 24 and 25 would just be included in the motion to approve all the remaining.
Okay. All right, so I'll go to Vice Chair Carlton.
124 and 125. I'm sorry. Yeah, 124 and 125 in list D have been withdrawn.
Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of all other items not pulled by staff.
Okay. Second from Senator Canizaro. Discussion on the motion. Okay. All those in favor say aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, this is the point where we're going to start with item D. But any of you, if we didn't pull yours, then you got to sit with us for a while today. But you're free to go if you wish. So I'm going to take a 1-minute break here to give you a chance if there's any that we didn't pull. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get. There we go. We're going to get started because I realized that we had just gone 3 hours, so we took a little bit more than a 1 minute break. But so here we're going to follow the agenda with one change. We're going to take up. Let me find my notes. Item number 63 in K12B first. And then we'll just follow the numbers. So
3 and 4 also deal with water resources.
Oh, I'm sorry, and 3 and 4. We didn't pull that, did we?
No, it was pulled out.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to do, yeah, so we'll do 63, 3 and 4, and K12B. So if those that are doing that, if you'll come forward, that's the water issue. And
ready?
Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Dennis and members of the Interim Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Nelson Araujo, and I serve as Nevada Infrastructure Advisor under the leadership of Governor Sisolak. Joining me today is Jim Lawrence, Director of the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Chair Dennis and members of the Interim Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present this historic proposal, the Nevada Water Conservation and Infrastructure Initiative, for your consideration. As you know, Nevada is the driest state in the nation while simultaneously experiencing some of the fastest population and economic growth in the country. Water reliability is critical to the state's economic well-being, essential to public health, and an important part of equality of life, the natural environment, and future economic diversification. Responsible management of Nevada's limited water supply is even more pressing when coupled with the increasing impacts of climate change, including extreme drought and record heat. The demand for water into the future must be balanced with actual water availability. In many local areas across the state, committed water rights will outpace the water supply without substantial reductions in consumptive use or improvements in efficiency. Water decline in aquifers and depletion of springs and streams will cause the conflict and shortages in the future without proactive steps to responsibly prevent it. The Nevada Water Conservation and Infrastructure Initiative, which we're coining this grant opportunity, is focused on reducing water demands across the state and ensuring the long-term reliability of our water resources. By taking a strategic, thoughtful, and responsible approach, this initiative will focus on the following priority areas: water conservation and climate resiliency, environmental justice, and water demand and availability. The centerpiece of the Nevada Water Conservation Initiative is a $100 million grant proposal funded through the American Rescue Plan. If approved, this program will support investments to reduce water demand by residential, commercial, and agricultural sectors while supporting investments to repair and replace aging, leaking infrastructure and simultaneously investing in our workforce. The initiative will deploy $100 million in American Rescue Plan dollars towards water infrastructure and conservation efforts using a formula-based selection process and administered through the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. DCNR has a long, successful track record in implementing water conservation and infrastructure projects through a variety of programs, ranging from implementation of the State Revolving Fund for Water, River Restoration, for infrastructure, grants for lead pipe testing in schools, watershed and river restoration, and working through directly with landowners on water efficiency through the conservation districts programs. All programs are carried out through public participation and transparency, consistent ranking criteria to ensure highest priority projects are funded, and with an eye to maximize investments through opportunities of leveraging with other program funding. Chair Dennis, with your permission, I would love to turn it over to Director Lawrence to walk us through exactly how this program will be administered and how we plan to proceed moving forward. if approved.
Thank you. And I just one correction. You said good morning. We are actually in the afternoon now. So just want to point that out because we got a lot to go today. So
I think I started in the morning, Chair Dennis.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for the heads up. So good afternoon. For the record, I'm Jim Lawrence. I'm the acting director for the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. That's a mouthful, so moving forward, I'll just refer to it as DCNR. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. This is a really important and historic opportunity, I think, for the state. And all the years that I've worked for the state, there's always been a tremendous need regarding water infrastructure and water conservation. So this is a tremendous opportunity, and I'm very proud and pleased to be here. I certainly heard some of the public testimony this morning regarding, how is this going to be administered, and there was questions that are regarding positions. I'm going to walk you through how we envision this working, what our administrative needs are in our thought process, and how we're looking at this moving forward. So as I walk through that, I'll also try to explain a little bit of our rationale and thinking behind it. I'm going to primarily address item 63, which is the initiative, and the companion piece, which is K-12B. It's a little wonky. The reason why there's not why the K-12B is not a work program under the item D, it's an informational item. Because we are in the middle of the postseason of the baseball, I will use the analogy that it's a pitcher-catcher thing. And that's the reason why it's an informational item on the catcher side, and I will explain that when we get to that. First I want to say when we were approached, we did take this extremely seriously. We know that this is a historic opportunity, and we want to make sure that DCNR has the ability and the capability to do it right and do it transparently and make sure that there is comfort and level with the public and with this body and with public agencies and how we're running this. So it wasn't an automatic for us. We went through the thought process of saying, is this the right fit? And we do believe it is. And for a lot of the reasons that Mr. Aho just went through, this isn't new to us. For example, our Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, who I'll refer to as NDEP moving forward, for many, many years, I think decades, they have been administering the state formula funding from the EPA for safe drinking water, for clean water programs. They have a very established program in place, and they are working daily with the folks that are working in the water space. So I say it's not, so like I said, it's not new. And I mention that because, one, we have the experience to get this going, but two, we also have the experience to know what are some of the pitfalls that we have to look out for as we administer it in order to make it successful. So we did come to the conclusion that, yes, DCNR is the right fit. We also looked at what is the need. This is a $100 million initiative. So immediately went to the NDEP folks. We looked, what is our project list? What is our priority list under the various EPA water programs? Like I said, we get the state formula funding. The need always outpaces the amount of money that we get from DC. So just on that list alone, we know there's a need. We also want to honor the what occurred earlier this year with the listening sessions that went on with the ARPA portal. We have reviewed all of those projects that are water related that went through the ARPA portal. There was about 138 projects or ideas, suggestions submitted. Not all of those had dollar amounts attached to it because this really wasn't an application process. The portal was to get ideas, and so some folks didn't have numbers. But even the folks that had numbers far exceeded the 100 million. So we know that there is a need and a tremendous opportunity, and we want to make sure that we can leverage this for the greater good of Nevada. Lastly, and there was a question that came up earlier regarding schedule. That was the other thing that we looked very closely at, is what would it take to successfully implement this under the ARPA rules. As was discussed earlier, we know that the ARPA rules require the money to be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and then expended by December 2026. And I want to pause there on the December 31st, 2024 date. At first glance, there's a comfort level saying, there's time to go through a very lengthy process because we have 2 years to obligate it. I would say, one, the need is now, so I don't really think waiting a long time is a good idea, but also from our previous experience, We know from water infrastructure grants, we know that there are usually issues with contracting that comes up in project and infrastructure projects. Sometimes there are supply chain issues. Sometimes there are just delays in project implementation. We feel that for water projects, you need 3 years. So we're not looking at the December 31st, 2024 deadline for obligation. We're looking much sooner. And actually, we're looking more in the weeks and months spectrum and not in the year spectrum. And I just think it's important because we want to make sure we don't leave money on the table or projects half finished. Going back to, looking at the list and, just even the thoughts and ideas that are out there. We know it's greater than 100 million. And we also know that there's been listening sessions. And, I'm also mindful that there might be expectations out there. So we are looking at a schedule and an implementation package that both honors the work that's been done and submitted previously, but is also forward-looking so that we can make sure that we have a transparent process in place that has prioritization criteria that can be comparing project applications with project applications so that we know we're getting the biggest and best projects being done. So in order to come up with that criteria, and I'll talk a little bit about how there's going to be some parallel things going on here. One of the first things we want to do is stand up basically a technical advisory committee. We have a lot of tremendous expertise at DCNR. But I've never been one to feel like doing things in a vacuum is the best way to do things. And we know that there's a lot of experts throughout the state that we want to hear from. So we do want to have a technical advisory committee stood up immediately. And the reason why we would do that is we want to get the information from those experts and get more information regarding sort of the weights and balances on the metrics on how we're going to evaluate these proposals. The advisory committee, we are looking, certainly we would look for suggestions, but what we're looking at for the makeup of the advisory committee would be sort of water suppliers or water purveyor experts from both North Nevada, Southern Nevada, and also Central Rural Nevada. We also think it's going to be very important to have representation from tribal nations. We think it'll be important to have some representation from a builder or a developer or a contractor, because there's going to be some of those provisions as well. And then also those in the research community, somebody from a research institution that's familiar with water challenges, as well as having somebody from like a water nonprofit organization that has that expertise and sort of on-the-ground experience. We feel that having that broad base, we get more information on how best to do this. And it also just sort of opens it up and makes it more transparent so folks aren't feeling that it's just DCNR doing it sort of in a meeting room, so to speak. So that would be stood up immediately to do that. We would also, parallel to coming up with the metrics for how we're going to prioritize projects, we will have to come up with a new application. And the reason why we need to do the new application is because a lot of the information that came in, either that's existing or came in through the portal, again, there were more thoughts or ideas, but not necessarily a grant application, so to speak. And if we're going to prioritize and have a very transparent ranking system, we need to make sure that we're asking for the information from the applicants in order to do that scoring system and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. So immediately with the Technical Advisory Committee setting up the rubric and the metrics and the weights and balances, we will set up the application system. We will also make modifications to the Nevada Recovers website so that we have a very open, transparent platform to communicate with the public. And then internally, we're looking at modifying what we have in existing with our water infrastructure program. We have a great program for intaking applications that is great for reporting and accountability and tracking expenditures. So we were looking at the Nevada Recovers website as the outfacing and then using internally for our management, because it's one thing to award a grant, it's another thing to manage it through the life of a project. Lastly, I've been asked to talk a little bit about metrics, and the metrics that we're looking at, again, we're looking we certainly have ideas, but we also want to get ideas from other folks. And then, so up top is water conservation and water use and efficiency. And you heard a lot of that through public comment and earlier today that there is a need. There's a common sentiment that, we have many of our basins are over-appropriated or being over-pumped. Water conservation, I think regardless of any single annual precipitation year, water conservation is still going to be key and important to the state of Nevada moving forward. So that is one of our highest priorities. Obviously, minimum criteria is it has to meet the ARP requirements. We're also looking at how is it going to impact public health and safety. We know that we have water systems that currently don't meet necessarily all of the water standards that are out there on the books. They're kind of grandfathered in. So if we can help conserve water, then also meet water quality standards, we think we have a win-win. We're also going to be looking at geographic equity, as I put it. Basically, with all of our programs, we've always looked to maximize all of our dollars across the state and not just have it go to one area of the state. We've always looked at leveraging funds. This is a historic opportunity, but as I said earlier, there's greater need. So we are going to want to take advantage of every opportunity we can to leverage our funds to maximize the benefit to the people of Nevada, which is, I think, a good reason for DCNR to administer this because of our experience with the NDEP, with the water projects through EPA. We have a pretty good idea with the water systems out there, kind of what their needs are. And so we have kind of a good feel on some of the opportunities we'll have to leverage and maximize our value across the state. And certainly we'll be looking at commitments to providing good paying jobs, and then any other environmental factors as Technical Advisory Committee comes up and thinks is important, because again, I don't think we need to hear from some of the other experts. And before I lose that train of thought, when I went over the advisory committee off the top of my head, I saw my notes and I noticed I neglected two very important ones, and one would be, we think NACO, the Nevada Association of Counties would be a good person to plug in, or good individuals, as well as the League of Cities, because those are the ones that are close to the constituents and the challenges of providing water. So we would definitely want them on the panel as well, or also on the advisory committee. Schedule-wise, like I touched on earlier, even though we have until December 2024, we don't think that works good for the state. So again, we are looking at having these things implemented, or not implemented, but actually obligated, within months and not years. And so immediately working up into that, May, June timeframe for awarding these funds. In that window, that's when we set up the advisory committee, what we call the intended use plan, which is basically the criteria and the metrics, and then we go out with the applications and we intake them, and then we're going to evaluate them, and then again, award or obligate, within months, not years. And then lastly, I will, touch on K-12B, which is the catcher item. That's really the item 63 is moving the $100 million from the ARPA account to DCNR. DCNR is the catching aspect. Because we are in between legislative sessions, we cannot create an executive budget in between legislative sessions, and so it has to be a non-executive budget just because of the timing of where we are, which is why we don't have a work program for it. We have an informational statement. But I will say along those lines, the one thing that I feel strongly about is that in setting up a program like this, it should have an individual budget account for transparency and accountability. My experience with folks that have run similar programs and then got in trouble with audits, probably the biggest thing that I've heard is not misuse of funds, but commingling of funds. And so when you have money in multiple funding sources in one budget account, the tracking gets a little bit harder, and then I get worried about commingling of funds. So I really do think a separate budget account is best for this, just for those reasons. It's also easier to do the reporting as well. We are also, finally, there's a question from the Nevada Farm Bureau regarding administration and positions. We're looking at two permanent positions. One would be an administrative services officer for the financial components of it. The other is a program officer, which is really the program administration and doing the outreach. We're also looking at two contract positions. And the reason why we're looking at the two contract positions is, I know these discussions have occurred here, recruiting and can take time to find state employees. So we do know that there are really talented folks out there, particularly in the natural resource world, that aren't necessarily interested in this point of time in their career and having a full-time state job, but they're very interested in working on programs like this and getting them up and running and doing it temporarily. So, the thought is to have 2 contract positions so that we can immediately start the work with setting up the advisory committee and the applications. And then a key component of that, we know that there's going to be assistance needed by communities and tribals, nations in order to apply. We want to provide that technical assistance to help them. We don't want to leave them alone, and that's another reason for the contract positions. And I think I'll leave it there. That was kind of a lot to throw out. It was high level, but I kind of wanted to give you an overview and a flavor of our thought process and how we're going to carry this out. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to, I'm making a list. We're going to start first with the Assemblyman Watts down in Las Vegas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for the detailed presentation. I've had a few questions, and I think you pretty much addressed several of them. And just want to take a moment. I know that I and some other members of the legislature have been advocating for making these bold and necessary investments in water projects and infrastructure in our state, and really appreciate the thought that went into this proposal to do just that. Transparency is definitely something that's important to us, and appreciate the inclusion of other stakeholders on this advisory group that will help really flesh out the details of the process that you've provided kind of some initial thoughts and outline on, as well as some of the remarks you made related to the budget. So just to get some extremely clear clarification, does your agency intend to create an executive budget account in the next budget to house this program moving forward, since we can't create one in the interim?
Thank you, and to you, Chair Dennis, and through you to Assemblyman Watts. For the record, Jim Lawrence. The answer to that is yes. This is really a timing issue. In fact, we did this, I think, in 2014 with another program. We had to kind of do the same thing that had urgency. Because of the timing, we need to build it as a non-executive because we need to get going on this right away. Our intent is to make it an executive budget account. We are actually even working with the governor's finance office now because we're in that GovRec part of the budget build. So yeah, that is our intent moving forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. I just wanted to get that completely clear, and I appreciate that. I think when it comes to transparency, the other thing that I just want to kind of put out there for the rest of the committee's consideration is, and we've done this with some similar initiatives, is getting some regular reports to the legislature, perhaps semi-annually, to keep us updated as this is moving forward. The other question that I had was, with the contract work, those contract positions that you hope to be able to bring on quickly, could you just provide a little bit more detail about when you expect that contract work to begin?
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Jim Lawrence, and to you, Chair Dennis, and through you to Assemblyman Watts. Two things. I will go back to the request for reporting, and certainly we do that with many of our similar programs, and so we don't have any issues with that. In fact, we welcome that. Also, as like we talked about, we're building this as an executive budget for the upcoming session, so then this body would get reports as we do our agency reports and our budget reports and our budget asks. So there will be some reporting there as well. But yeah, regarding the semi-annual reports, I think that's very reasonable. I have learned over the years that my only ask with those types of reports is that there's a sunset date on it. When I first started with the state, about the same time Assemblywoman Carlton started her legislative career, I learned this morning. I was doing a lot of reports that were on the books for a long time, and just we got a lot of work to do. So if there could be a sunset date, sometime after the projects are expended and constructed, but not have it go on for years and years. Thank you.
Thank you. And just two other things. So you addressed some of the questions and comments that have been made by some of the folks in public comment. I did notice in some of the backup materials that it was mentioned that municipal conservation and resource planning is, at least at the initially, considered something that might be a usage of these funds. And I know that we heard from some of the regional water authorities their interest in supporting, I think, similar planning efforts. So at least at this point in time, do you see that as something that could be eligible to apply for this bucket of funding?
Thank you for the question. Again, Jim Lawrence for the record, and to you and through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblyman Watts. I think initially, yes, and I just say initially because I don't want to get out in front of any advisory committee or any input we get from the public. But certainly, again, our focus is on water conservation primarily, and then water standards and helping communities and environmental justice. So I think to the extent, that an entity developed a water conservation plan and it can be demonstrated that it's going to lead to water conservation, I would think that would be eligible. Again, I don't want to get out in front of the technical advisory committee. Then the final ranking and prioritization would just be based on the metrics and how much conservation would occur. But the simple answer to your question to Assemblyman Watts is yes, I think initially they would qualify.
Great. Thank you very much. And the one last thing is something that one of our colleagues mentioned earlier. We've all seen the declines at Lake Mead. The Bureau of Reclamation has asked all of the Colorado River states to collectively cut at least 2 million acre feet in use immediately to help preserve the Colorado River system. We know that we've got several basins that are over-appropriated, some of which severely and some of which are being overdrawn. So with all that context, I guess my question is this something, and given the timelines both to obligate the funds but also get them spent by the time that we need to satisfy the requirements of the federal law, do you see this as something that can wait until we pass a budget in June of next year to begin standing this process up?
For the record, Jim Lawrence, and thank you for the question to you and through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblyman Watts. To be frank, no. Just kind of with the timelines and just our experience with infrastructure projects, things happen, and there's project delays that are out of the grantor's control. The deadline to expend this is 2026, and we don't want to leave money on the table. And so I do strongly believe we need to get this stood up now so we can get the advisory committee going. We can start getting the application. We can start working with stakeholders. I am afraid that if we waited until June, or actually budgets actually get stood up in July, we've lost half of a year. And we're actually aiming to get applications and awards by that time so folks can construct and implement. So hope that answers your question. Thank you.
It does. Thank you very much for your answers and for the thought and effort you put into this. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging my many questions.
Thank you. Okay, we have Senator Neal's and then Assemblywoman Tolles, and then Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So, Mr. Lawrence, I just had a really quick question. So I was reading the backup, and in water, and there's a lot of partnership here with the demands and looking at the water demands. But I'm wondering how are you guys going to include, or in the discussion, human migratory patterns? Like how many people are coming to the state, number one, and whether or not we are going to actually start considering the limitation on how much we can grow. And, I know historically we probably had those conversations in like the 90s about, how we might have to have a point where we can only grow so much, right? And I know that there are political reasons for why we continue to move forward, but I'm wondering, in this study, are we at least going to start to talk about that, watch the migration patterns because they matter, and then talk about if we can only be a state that has 3.2 million, then that might have to be our reality, right? It's a hard reality, but it's a real one. And so I'm wondering if that is going to be a part of the study too.
So thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Jim Lawrence, and to you, and through you, Chair Dennis. I think your question is more related to the Division of Water Resources study, and so I would, I guess, what's the pleasure of the chair? Do you want to stay with the water initiative? And there certainly is a tangent there, or shall we start answering questions regarding the other ones? What's your pleasure?
Well, we've got all three here, but if you can, especially if it's a quick response, because we obviously have a lot of things to do this afternoon. So,
right.
But if you can do a quick response, then that's fine.
Thank you. So I guess regarding the 100 million water initiative regarding migratory patterns, I mean, certainly we will rely on the water providers. They are the ones that are closest to the ground and the constituency, and they have a better handle on exactly what they're forecasting for the future regarding population growth or population minimization. How much can we grow is not part of the $100 million initiative. So I do want to make it clear that this infrastructure, it's for existing infrastructure and really water conservation. So it's not necessarily prompting growth through the water initiative. It's more really kind of fixing and repairing an aging water infrastructure system. But your question does relate to the water initiative regarding the studies that we need to do at the Division of Water Resources, and also which was commented on earlier. And that is, quite frankly, the information and the data that the state is using in order to try to figure out perennial yield or basically just water budgets, how much water availability is going to be there. A lot of that data was from the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. So I think we do things a little differently. We have better scientific knowledge now. We need to update that information. To get to the question about, is this going to cap growth? I don't see it as specifically doing that. I look at it as specifically being the study to better inform what our water availability is, so those types of decisions can be made. That's really what I look at this. Again, our data, and it was, as mentioned earlier in public comment, it's from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and so we need to really update that because water is important in the state of Nevada. I know that wasn't a direct answer to your question, but hopefully it was enough, and I'm happy to provide you any more information.
All right, thank you, Chair Dennis.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to Assemblywoman Tolles.
Yes, thank you. And obviously, this is an incredibly important issue. Appreciate your presentation and the detail and the outline for the process forward. And I just wanted to go back to the Technical Advisory Committee and commend you on bringing together a variety of stakeholders to be a part of that. And forgive me if I missed it, but I did hear the Nevada Farm Bureau testify in regards to wanting to be a part of that process. Were they part of that committee as well? Do we have farmers as part of that committee?
Thank you for the question, Jim Lawrence, for the record, and to you and through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblywoman Tolles. When I ran off the initial list, it did not include the Nevada Farm Bureau. That being said, I mean, this is why we didn't want to come in and say, well, this is all set in stone, because we know we need to get public input. And certainly the agricultural community, particularly, there are some opportunities there that I believe, at least talking with different folks. And so I think having somebody from the Farm Bureau or from the agricultural community, I think that's a tremendously good suggestion.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick to follow up on Assemblywoman Tolles' question about the advisory committee. How many members do you think you'll have on that? Have you set that in stone? Are you looking to make 40 or 20 or 10? You have an idea how big of a committee this is going to be?
I can take this one. Chair Dennis, through you to Assemblyman Roberts. Right now we have it identified as 9, but just given some of the conversations today, I think there is a desire to continue to have a dialogue and to see if 9 is the right number. So I think there's some flexibility there as conversations unfold.
Thank you. And another follow-up.
Go ahead.
So, and you mentioned proportionality in pushing out grants. Is that going to be based on, is there going to be any kind of population figure into that, or is it going to be just purely geographic?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Jim Lawrence, and to you and through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblyman Roberts. I think we're going to be looking at input from the advisory committee on what's the best way to do it. And sometimes it depends on the applications that come in my experience. I do know that we are always mindful through all of our programs to make sure that the money is spread across the state. That being said, we can't necessarily control who puts in the applications. We can control how we distribute it, but we can't control who is applying. And so that's sort of an unknown factor that gets into the sort of the geographic distribution. But certainly, the advice on how to do it is going to be based on the projects that we get in, what's the need, who can leverage, where are the projects located, and then the dollar amounts. Because sometimes you can, a dollar amount for one area is so big it might be more than the money we have available, for instance. And so that has to be a factor as well. But we will be looking for advice from the advisory committee, but as well as just like we always do, make sure that every Nevadan has an opportunity across the state to participate.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to Assemblyman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and then thanks to both of you for being there. Good to see you, former colleague Rajo, and you're still in position in the state, so thank you. To both of you, in your comments, you have both mentioned environmental justice. And for me, I know the definition. You can look it up on Wikipedia, what environmental justice is. And I'm wondering how that term or how that wish from both of you happens. How are you going to bring that forward? I didn't hear anybody on your commission per se that would be able to maybe address that. And so I'm wondering, again, it sounds like it's been a priority, and just wondering how are you intending to make that happen? And then I have a follow-up question on that.
Thank you, Nelson Araujo, for the record. Chair Dennis, through you to Assemblywoman Titus. I can take the first part of this. We have, through the governor's office, have been convening conversations around environmental justice, and there were some legislative efforts in the last session to also make sure that we were unfolding these conversations and having robust dialogue with agencies to see how we match these metrics. Environmental justice is an important topic, and it's been even further amplified through the efforts of the federal laws that have been passed down, one of them being the bipartisan infrastructure law, which requires the Justice 40 component to be implemented in our strategies as we deploy and pursue these grants resources. I will say, and I hope that Director Lawrence would echo this, but we are going to be leaning in on the stakeholders that are brought forth to help us understand what the environmental justice thresholds and guidelines need to be as we pursue and consider these grant opportunities, because depending on which project or which topic we're talking about, the needs and the metrics are different.
Will that have a weighted, in your request for grant applications, would you have that an extra weight in that application that they meet a threshold for environmental justice?
Chair Dennis, and Nelson Araujo, for the record, through you to Assemblywoman Titus. I think that's something that we're looking to get further advice from the Technical Advisory Committee, but I will say that it is a priority for the Governor's Office and DCNR to ensure that environmental justice is a strong component of the applications that are pushed forth.
Okay, quick to finish this up. You made a point that this is going to be in a non-executive budget because of the urgency in getting this money allocated, and that you're going to apply to put it in the executive budget come next session. But you also mentioned that you're rapidly going to look at allocating these funds. if this isn't a non-executive budget, we won't really have oversight as a body, legislative body, to support or approve how you allocate your funds. And potentially, you could have all 100 million allocated before the governor's budget comes out. So how do you see that happening? Is there a concern there? Again, how are we as a body going to have any oversight over this $100 million that we're going to allocate to you that potentially you don't have to come back here for our approval?
Thank you, Jim Lawrence, for the record, and to you and through you, Chair Dennis, to Assemblywoman Titus. You're absolutely right. I mean, because we are in October between sessions, it has to be non-executive. And I do, like we've talked about, I do feel it's urgent. The urgency is less to get the money obligated tomorrow. Like I said, the urgency is to get the money obligated, within months and not years. But it'll be during the session or maybe towards the end of it is what we envision. But where the urgency is like we've been talking about, making sure that we have a transparent process, making sure that we have representation across the state, making sure we have an advisory committee thinking about criteria and how we address environmental justice. All of that takes time, it takes people, and it takes resources. That's what I'm feeling the urgency on right now, is the time it takes to stand a program up before funding it. So I do hear your concerns. I guess I would offer this. Like we put on the record, we are looking at establishing an executive budget account. I do know come January, typically my department is asked to give presentations to this body. We give updates. We give specific updates on things like our Conserve Nevada or Q1 program that's been very successful in awarding grants across the state. So we will, we talked about give the information reports there. It will have budget hearings because it will be established as an executive budget account. But the thought that, we're going to go out and then take all 100 million and then allocate it come November 1st and sort of bypass this process, it just won't happen. I mean, it's going to take time to stand this up and get this right, and we want to get it right.
Okay, let's go to Senator Goicoechea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and mine is going to be more of a plea to the committee. Mr. Raho, as you did your presentation, you talked about conservation and, water quality, but you also talked about water availability. And that's been my heartburn with this. What's being proposed to the committee is, folks, we're not looking at water availability. There's not enough in this program to really bring the data, the perennial yields forward on the 256 basins we've got in this state. And I'll delve a little more into it when we get into D4, which is why I asked for it to come forward. But it really, really bothers me. I'm looking at this, and I can see you're going to have a tech advisory committee. I'm sorry, it's going to be north of 15 someplace, unless you really limit some people, and that's going to make some hard feelings. So, it's going to be quite a large group, I think, if you're going to get input from everybody, and the application process. So this is a ways out. I mean, really, if you're acting on applications when we're acting on bills, it'll surprise me. We're a short time frame, 90 days. That's where we're at. So anyway, this is good. But my real heartburn with this is the fact we're not investing in the database we need, the water inventories that we need in this. It's fine. We talk about, and Mr. Lawrence touched on that. We're using, and I think you were kind. A lot of these recon studies, U.S. recon studies, they're 70 years old. What are we going to do? Dust them off and say, okay, this is data, it's good, and then we're going to spend $100 million in infrastructure, and we don't know what the perennial yield of that basin is, because we don't have the data and we don't have the staff to put it in place. So I'll wait until we get to D4 and unload a little more. But my question to you, I guess, would be, what's your thoughts on how are we going to come up with really good quality data? Why invest $100 million in a project when there's not water in the ground?
Thank you for that question, Chair Dennis. Nelson Araujo for the record, through you to Senator Goicoechea. That's a great question, and I hate to answer it with by advocating for another item, but I think there are efforts also being discussed throughout the day today to help us move the ball forward in digitizing the way that we look to answer some of these questions that are lingering and look to address the ongoing issue of water availability. So I think all of it will complement one another. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, and there are a lot of folks playing critical roles in these, but if we work collaboratively and if we stay in contact with each other, then I trust that as a state we can move forward and make sure that we're carefully addressing the issues while also being cognizant of the concerns that are in front of us.
Well, thank you. And again, I did reach out to the state engineer and Director Lawrence and you as well, Mr. Aho, on the subject. So I do appreciate your response back, and I'll wait to take the rest of it up in J. Maybe we can continue. In D4, we can take that up just a little bit more with your permission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not hearing it. I'm Vice Chair Carlton.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the motion would be to approve item 63K12B. Is that correct? With staff? We don't need to do K12B. That's in. So it would be approval of item number 63. And with a reporting requirement, and since we have been requested to have a sunset, somebody's leaving me hanging here. Give me a minute, Mr. Lawrence. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm back. So this would be a motion to approve item number 63, and with the request of, through testimony, that we would have a report back, and we would have that reporting go up until the 2025 session. And if we want to extend it, we can. Not we, the royal we. That would, and quarterly, please. Quarterly through session 2025. That would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion and a second from Senator Canizaro. Further discussion on the motion? Yeah, Senator Gochia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those lines, would you consider amending that to the fact that there was a commitment made that they're going to proceed with an executive budget? I see this once we get beyond 23, 24. I mean, it should be an executive budget, and I would hope this body has control.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, as the maker of the motion, I believe that was part of the discussion, and that it will be going into an executive budget. So with that, I would add that to the motion, that this will, and we've gotten commitments, it will be in the next executive budget.
Okay. Okay, so that, just so it's clear on what the motion is, that'll be added. And I believe Senator Hafen had a question, or we're on comments on the motion.
Just a statement, Mr. Chair. I'll be abstaining from this item as I do operate a regulated water utility. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. An abstention. We have one abstention, Senator Hafen. The motion passes. All right. So thank you very much. We are going to take a lunch break. Oh, wait. Sorry. Yeah, while we have you here, let's go ahead. I forgot about that. Let's do 3 and 4. But we got to do it quick because. Okay, great. Do we want to, do you just want to go straight to your questions, or do we? Okay, just so we can speed this up rather than do a presentation, I think if we just get to the questions, because we really didn't have a lot, and I believe this is the one that. Yeah, we'll just go straight to Senator Goicoechea.
Thank you. And again, everybody's in the interest of time, but it isn't going to do us any good. It's going to get dark 30, but thank you. So anyway, and I commend Director Lawrence for being able to pull this off. We had this conversation Monday, and I said, no, you cancel your flight. But anyway, good job, Jim. Anyway, I'm going to get right down to it. The way I understand it, and I have had a conversation with Mr. Sullivan about how this was going to work. Now, I believe this $6.4 million you've requested is going to be spent over the next 4 years. Is that correct?
Adam Sullivan, for the record, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess that's what really, and again, I'm laying myself before the committee, that's what really gives me the heartburn. We know our water resources and the data we've got in place are in trouble. We not need to expand that. 40% of them are over allocated, at least 20% are over pumped. And we've got a lot of basins we don't have a clue what's there. And of course, Adam and I argue banter on that. We really don't have the data we need in place to know whether we're exceeding the perennial yield or not in 256 basins. And here we are, we're asking for, and I believe this was a request from Division of Water Resources, only requested $6.4 million. We could easily spend, $50 million in putting this database together. And what we've asked for here is $25,000 a basin or $6,000 a year. I tell you, folks, you can't dust the covers off, let alone know what they're pumping out there or what the perennial yield of that basin is. I'm saying we need to come back. We've got some more money here. We have to do better than that. Or if we don't care any more than that, we're going to invest $25,000 a basin for over a 4-year period to determine what our water resources are and our perennial yield. Folks, we just as well go home. And we're in the middle of a drought. We're talking about new guidelines on the Colorado, and yet we don't want to know what we have in our groundwater basins in this state. And, I talked to, State Engineer Sullivan, he says, yeah, we've got the data. It's not data enough to where we can make allocations and start. And the bottom line is we're either going to have to retire or curtail. You can't have 40% of these basins over appropriated. So before we start changing water law, let's figure out what we got in the bank. You care to respond, please, and then we'll get out of here.
Adam Sullivan, for the record, I definitely appreciate your comments and acknowledging the urgency and the potential for how much more we could do and probably need to do for protecting water resources in our state. The way that we've approached this project is to really look at what we can efficiently do in the 4-year period that this funding source is available to really get the most bang for the buck on a statewide basis. And how can we provide the most value that then we'll be able to give ourselves a foundation to address some of the concerns that you're speaking to. Really, what our aim is to update the baseline science using proven state-of-the-art methods to revisit and best understand the water budgets that are naturally occurring in the state. We need to be able to demonstrate the efficacy of these methods and establish a new standard or a current standard that really sets forward best practices for implementing tools, and so to be able to address questions of water availability, whether it is a proposed new project or whether we are addressing options or alternatives to reduce existing commitments, and to be able to make that scientifically based, defensible, and as accurate as possible, and be efficient with the resources that we have in our state agency to best address these problems for the state.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Or a second question, if you want. And I appreciate that, Mr. Sullivan. But I guess, we're sitting here, we're working off an agenda that's going to roll out $757 million. And unfortunately, when we're talking about $1.5 million going to Division of Water Resources, And yeah, you're going to be able to pull up some data, but I'm really concerned about we're going to apply new science and new technology to 70-year-old data that probably isn't accurate. And I don't know how that benefits us. So I'm, again, asking, we need to have a better database before we start, applying the new transevaporation, and this is truly where we are. And, if we're ever going to have any justice, environmental or otherwise, we're going to have to figure out what's in the bank. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Gokche, do you want to make a motion? It would be to approve 3 and 4.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we appropriate $60 million to Division of Water Resources.
1 minute recess, please. No.
Yeah, I will make a motion to approve it, but again, I truly believe that this is a true error on behalf of this committee and the state of Nevada. With the money we've had in this state, and we're only going to put $25,000 a basin in for the next 4 years, $6,000 a year, to actually come up with a database. This is ludicrous. But I will make the motion. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. We have a motion, a second from Senator
Second, Mr. Chair, and under comments, Senator, there's a lot of things in here that I'd like to add a couple zeros to, but there's only so many zeros in this state at the moment. So I understand the process, and we're moving forward. Just because you do it the first time doesn't mean it doesn't happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Okay, so we're going to take a lunch break. We're going to start back up. It's 5 till. So 25 after, I'm going to gavel because we got to get going. We're going to come back in a different gear this afternoon so that we can move quicker. So everybody come back ready to move through the agenda. We are in recess. Oh, first, hey, for